Welcome to the course. If you're watching this, you're already ahead of 99% of Canadian homeowners in terms of building your wealth and using your mortgage for your advantage. My name is Jeff Hamilton, and my goal over the next few videos is to give you everything you need to implement the foundation of the most effective mortgage strategy in Canada called the Smith Manoeuvre. By the end of this free course, you're going to have everything you need to fully understand how to convert your mortgage into a tax-deductible debt, how to use that process to gain long-term wealth, and how to do all of that without using a single dollar of extra money from your pocket. There's a lot to go over, so let's jump into it. The agenda for this first video is we're going to talk about how to stop paying and start building with your mortgage so you can build that long-term wealth. Where I'm going to tell you a little bit more about who I am and why I'm doing what I'm doing. And then we're going to discuss the learning roadmap so you know exactly what to expect throughout the entire course. Before we get into that, I'm going to read a quick disclaimer about this course. I am a licensed mortgage broker who is Smith Manoeuvre certified. I am not a financial advisor or tax accountant. While the strategies discussed in this course are based on established financial principles, they are presented for educational purposes only. Every financial situation is unique. Projections and tools within this course are based on specific assumptions and are not a guarantee of future performance. You are encouraged to seek independent advice on your specific situation from a qualified professional to ensure any strategy aligns with your specific risk tolerance and tax situation. Now that we have that covered, let's move on to stop paying and start building. Turn your biggest expense into your biggest asset. The traditional way is broken. With real estate prices at historic highs, following the traditional mortgage path by just making your monthly payments and hoping for the best is no longer enough to get ahead. That worked in the 50s and 60s and 70s when housing prices were super low. But now the housing prices are super high. It's difficult enough to qualify and then to keep up with payments for a mortgage. We need more strategies so that we can build wealth for retirement and we don't get stuck with a house that we own in retirement and no money to live on, which is something even now I'm seeing more often than I wish I would. The dead equity trap. Most Canadian homeowners view their mortgage as an anchor. I want to show you how to turn it into an engine by giving life to that dead equity. So having equity in your house seems like a great thing, and it can be for some, but for most Canadians, it's not doing you any good to have empty equity not working for you. So I'm going to show you how to make that equity work for you. What your bank won't tell you. My mission is to educate as many Canadians as possible on legal, CRA compliant strategies that you otherwise wouldn't hear about. Now, some people are going to say, your banks don't want you to know this. That's not really true. The fact of the matter is the banks just don't care. This strategy will actually, in the end, probably profit a bank more, but they won't take the time to educate you on that because it's not in their best interest to spend the time to educate their customers. They don't have time to spend with you to make sure this strategy is implemented correctly. Other professionals like accountants and financial planners sometimes know about this strategy, but it doesn't really fall into their wheelhouse of tax or mortgage efficiency. That's why it falls on mortgage brokers like myself to learn about the strategy, become certified in the strategy, and educate people on how to use their mortgage more effectively for exactly this reason. So that's why you haven't heard about it at this point, and that's why it's so important to get the message out. And I'm making it my personal mission. A strategy of efficiency. You already have the mortgage and you already have the equity. It's time to learn how to manage that relationship more efficiently so it benefits you instead of just the bank. That's exactly what we're doing. We're not making sweeping changes to your mortgage. The Smith Maneuver is not a mortgage product. It's a strategy that you use with your mortgage. That's a common misconception, and I'm going to show you exactly how to do it. So who am I and why should you listen to me? A licensed professional on mortgage strategy. Certifications and licenses. I am personally licensed as a mortgage broker in both BC and Ontario, and I am a certified Smith Manoeuvre professional. My team. I work in tandem with my wife, Renee, who is a mortgage brokering guru and a Smith Manoeuvre certified broker as well. We also have a team of people that we work with and a whole network of professionals to provide the absolute best possible service. So we work within a team bigger than ourselves, and I have a network to the entire Smith Manoeuvre certified professional network that includes professions like accountant and financial planner that can be a big help when you're implementing a strategy like this. I set up the foundation and then help you execute. Those other professions will help you keep it going in the long term, and you can choose to use them, and I can make recommendations for you as well. My Smith Manoeuvre experience. This is actually the whole reason I got into this. My wife has been a mortgage broker for many years, and she introduced us to the Smith Maneuver. Seeing and understanding the effects of the Smith Maneuver motivated me to change careers and make this my sole focus. So I was I was a marketing professional for many years, up at the director level. I had a successful career, but once we implemented Smith Maneuver on our house and our financial situation, I really started to understand the gap that was present in the market. I understood how effective it was for me and my family and changing our financial outlook in the long term. And I understood how few Canadians actually know about the strategy. And seeing those two things made me really passionate about getting the word out, because this is a strategy that more Canadians need to be taking advantage of. In fact, I think every Canadian homeowner should know about the strategy, and most Canadian homeowners should be implementing the strategy. And so that's what made me switch my career, and that's what brought me to where I am right now, educating and providing the service to Canadian homeowners. My success. I've run the numbers for many clients over my time as a Smith Manoeuvre certified mortgage broker. The average projected net worth improvement of my clients is over $1 million. And so in this strategy, I'm going to show you the foundational strategy of Smith Manoeuvre. When I use my whole network of strategies to personally implement a strategy for a customer, the projected net wealth improvement is over $1 million. The projected net wealth improvement from the foundational plain Jane Smith Maneuver that I'll teach in this course is also phenomenal. But to get to the upper echelon of results, we usually need to implement multiple strategies together. And I make it my job to simplify that for people. And that's why I have such an amazing track record of success for my clients. So your learning roadmap, let's talk about what you're going to experience in this course and how you're going to learn how to do this strategy on your own. From traditional to transformational. Free strategy access. This course provides every Canadian homeowner with free access to the foundational strategy of the Smith Maneuver called the Plain Jane. It's affectionately called the Plain Jane. That just means it's the baseline strategy of the strategy, and it's a really important first step for anyone that wants to make their money work more efficiently. The knowledge to act. By the end of this course, you will have the resources and information to execute the Plain Jane Smith Maneuver strategy. Tools and resources. You will be given everything you need to create your own projections and to execute the strategy properly. Strategy stacking. You will be given the insight on many other strategies that are available to Canadian homeowners, so you won't miss out on any opportunities. So if you're thinking, yes, it's great to learn the foundational strategy, but I want to know what else I'm missing out on, I'm going to tell you about all the other strategies that are available to you, or at least most of them, and who they might be applicable for, so that you can decide for yourself if it's worth exploring further for more strategies, or if you're comfortable just sticking with the foundational strategy on your own. And that is totally acceptable as well. And launch support. For those seeking the fastest, easiest, and best start, I offer a done-for-you experience that includes a comprehensive plan, exact setup, simple monthly actions, tracking tools, execution calls, and a full year of support. You can take advantage of that at any time by booking a call with me at jeffhamilton.ca. That's GEOFF Hamilton.ca. Book a call at any time on my website there, or there'll be a link down below in the description where you can do that as well. So coming up next in our first lesson video, we're going to talk about the Canadian tax disadvantage and why this strategy is so important to Canadian homeowners. So tune in there. Welcome to video one. This is the Canadian tax disadvantage. We're going to talk about why Canadians are at a disadvantage with their mortgage interest, what can be done, and who has it better. So buckle up. Here we go. All right, so first of all, the Canadian tax disadvantage. What we're going to go over in this video is the Canadian penalty, what we're paying, why it's different than other countries, and who has it better. The true cost of your mortgage, which is a really shocking section that will show you exactly what you're actually paying to own your house. The dead equity cost, how much it's costing you to have equity in your house, which is counterintuitive. The mortgage flip, how we can actually make your mortgage into a tax deductible expense. And the traditional strategy that everyone's been taught forever versus the new age strategy, where you actually take advantage of what you have available to you. Let's dive in. First section is the Canadian penalty. Why it's hard to get ahead in Canada. The border tax. So our American neighbors get a discount on their mortgage that you don't. And many people don't realize this, but the mortgage interest that's paid in America is actually a tax deduction. But in Canada, it's not. And so that's a huge advantage that the Americans have with their tax system over us. And it allows them to build wealth more easily in that scenario. But Americans aren't the only ones. So who else gets a discount? The Netherlands, Switzerland, Denmark, Sweden, Finland, Chile, Colombia, Czech Republic, Iceland, Italy, Japan, Portugal, and more. In fact, most developed countries offer this tax advantage, but unfortunately in Canada, it's not something that we have access to. And corporations, so the corporate edge, corporations are expected to use the tax code to build wealth and keep earnings. But for some reason, when it comes to your own personal net wealth, most people aren't putting the time and consideration into preventing taxes being paid and building their own net wealth individually. So it's a real odd situation that we have in Canada, but it's common. So the true cost of your mortgage, this is a shocking section. The scary numbers that we don't talk about. Gross income gap. For a $4,000 mortgage payment, you need to earn $6,666 in a 40% tax bracket. And so we always get excited when we hear, oh, I'm going to make $80,000 this year or $100,000 this year. But after taxes, the amount that you're actually bringing home is significantly less. And then when you're taking payments out of that, it feels like it's hitting even harder. The after-tax trap. Your mortgage is paid with your most expensive after-tax dollars. And that's only what's left after the 40%, in this case, taxes that are being taken away. The hidden cost. An $800,000 25-year mortgage costs over $2 million in pre-tax career earnings to pay off. So when you think I earn $100,000 and I have an $800,000 mortgage, you might think, great, 8 years worth of my income to pay that off. Great. That's reasonable. I can see that far ahead. But in actuality, you have to earn $2 million worth of earnings pre-tax before you'll make enough to pay that mortgage off actually what it's going to cost you in 25 years. The true cost mortgage calculator. Find out how much your mortgage is costing you. So let's go to jeffhamilton.ca/mortgage cost. There's a link down below. So click that and let's go do the calculation for your own mortgage. But for example's sake, I'll just run through this calculator with this example for you here. So this is the mortgage cost calculator. I'm going to plug in the numbers we were already using just so we can have a consistent example. So if our mortgage is $800,000, our monthly mortgage payment is $4,000. That would put our interest rate, if we have a 25-year amortization, at 3.64%. And let's say our mortgage tax rate is 40%. Calculate that. The total cash that we have to pay to the bank is going to be $1.232 million. So that's the after-tax income that we have to pay to the bank to pay off that mortgage over 25 years. But the pre-tax amount that we have to earn to actually get that amount of money is $2,050,000. So $2 million to pay off that house. So as you can see, it adds up really quickly. So if we can make any dent in that tax savings, if we can save ourselves some money there, the impact could be huge. And that's what this whole course is about. The debt equity cost. So $1 million in a savings account. Hardly anyone would think that keeping $1 million in the bank is a good idea because you're not earning really any return on it. But for some reason, when it comes to equity in our house, we think that keeping $1 million in there or whatever equity we have is a fantastic idea, even though it's earning us $0. And so it's just dead equity. And there's a cost to that. The idle wealth trap. Your home appreciates at the exact same rate, whether you owe $1 million on it or you owe $0 on it. And this excess equity is a non-performing asset. So your house is going to appreciate from 1 million to 1.5 million over a number of years, regardless of how much your mortgage you have. But if you have zero, your entire equity not performing and doing anything for you, that's all you'll get is that appreciation. In this course, we're going to show you how you can leverage that equity to actually build more assets so that you come out way, way ahead in the long run. The inflation tax. Every dollar trapped in your house loses purchasing power every single year it sits idle. And this is a crazy thing to think about. We've heard a lot about inflation recently. And so we know that $100,000 now is not worth as much as 100,000, or sorry, is worth much more than $100,000 in the future, 10 or 25 years in the future. What we don't think about is the fact that $100,000 in debt is going to be worth way less in the future. So $100,000 that we have now, in 25 years, that debt is not really worth the same as it is now, even though it's the same number, because $100,000 itself will be worth less. And the same works with the equity you have in your house. If you have $500,000 worth of equity in your house now, $500,000 worth of equity in your house in the future is not worth as much. And so the quicker and the earlier you can start the process of building up your assets and using all this stuff to your advantage, the more benefits that you get down the road. So this is what I was just talking about. The opportunity cost gap. Every $100,000 of dead equity is $100,000 wealth engine that's going unused. You're basically saying, I have this opportunity, I'm just not going to use it. The mortgage flip. So how can we change our mortgage from the Canadian way, where we have to pay tax on every bit of interest that we have, to the American or the Japanese or Czech Republic way, where we don't have to pay tax on the mortgage interest that we're paying? Making your mortgage interest a tax deduction. The Smith Maneuver. The Smith Maneuver is a strategy to convert your debt and use your equity to your advantage. There's a whole bunch of strategies within the Smith Maneuver itself, about 6 actually. But I'm going to teach you in this one for free how to do the basic Smith Maneuver called the Plain Jane. And it's very powerful, and I'll show you how in a minute. Debt conversion. Every dollar of non-deductible mortgage principal is systematically replaced with tax-deductible investment debt. And so in this strategy, we're not trying to get our debt to zero like you typically would. Instead, we're trying to take our mortgage that starts here and our investment debt that starts at zero down here and make them switch, so that by the end, we have all investment debt that is tax-deductible and no mortgage debt that isn't. The recycling mechanism. Using a readvanceable mortgage to pull equity out of the, using a readvanceable mortgage to pull equity out the moment it is paid in, ensuring your money never sits idle. So what this means is that we're going to use a tool called a readvanceable HELOC. If you're not familiar with what a HELOC is, it's the same as a line of credit or a really high limit credit card, except it's tied to your house. It's a home equity line of credit. And so what it means to have a readvanceable home equity line of credit is that as soon as you make a payment, a $1,000 payment on your $500,000 mortgage and bring it down to $499, now the room on your home equity line of credit is going to increase by $1,000. And that means you have $1,000 worth of borrowing limit in the HELOC. You don't have to use it. It's readvanceable whether or not you use it or not. But in this case, we are going to use that. And the more you pay down your mortgage, the more your HELOC increases in the room that you have available to borrow. Tax efficiency by design. Converting a personal expense into a business investment to unlock annual tax refunds from the CRA. So in Canada, your house is not tax deductible. The interest on your loan for your house is not tax deductible because it's considered a personal expense like a car or a potato even. Even though in Canada, a house is often considered by consumers to be an investment, the CRA doesn't see it that way. So what we're trying to do is convert it into an investment loan that the CRA recognizes so that it can become tax deductible. And it's a simultaneous strategy, building a compounding investment portfolio and paying off your home at the exact same time using the same monthly cash flow. And that last part is really important, the same monthly cash flow. This strategy does not use any additional cash out of your pocket. So if you're making your monthly mortgage payments right now, you can introduce this strategy with the right tools into your current situation and pay zero extra dollars ever. It's all about swapping the debt and using what you have already, not introducing more funds into the situation. So now let's compare the traditional versus the strategy way of doing things. So the old way is extinct once you look at this. Imagine there's 2 neighbors. Bob pays his house off the traditional way, just making his monthly mortgage payment for 25 years. In this example, we're going to say it's a $1 million house with an $800,000 mortgage. Now, Jane, his neighbor, bought the exact same house, just beside, for $1 million and has an $800,000 mortgage at the exact same time, but she's going to use the Smith maneuver while paying off her house. So after 18 years, Bob will be 18 years into a 25-year amortization, as will Jane, except for at that point, Jane will have an investment portfolio that has grown to be as much as her remaining debt. And so this is what we call the theoretical mortgage freedom date, which I'll go over in a second. After 25 years, where will Bob and Jane be? Bob will have a paid off house. He'll owe $0 and he'll have the entire asset owned by himself. Jane will have $800,000 worth of investment debt, but her portfolio will have grown to $1.6 million. And so she will be $800,000 ahead of where Bob is at that point, simply because she had a strategy and Bob did not. Now, you might say that Bob could also spend some extra cash to invest and reduce some of that advantage. But the same goes for Jane. Because it's cash flow neutral, Jane has the exact same amount of cash available after her mortgage that Bob does. And so she could continue investing even further beyond this as well and accelerate her profit, or her portfolio value, I should say. So theoretical mortgage freedom date, this is what we just went over. Using the Smith maneuver can move your debt-free milestone up by years, so as your portfolio begins to outpace your debt. So compounding is the real secret sauce here. And your investment portfolio is going to continue to grow faster and faster every single year. There's going to be a date several years ahead of your regular amortization end, which in this case, Jane went from 25 years to her theoretical mortgage freedom date at 18 years, where her investment portfolio finally was worth more than her entire remaining debt. Refund feedback loop. Every tax refund is recycled into the mortgage, creating a wealth snowball that the traditional homeowner never sees. So this is one of the more powerful parts of this maneuver. When you're taking out this investment debt from your HELOC, your home equity line of credit, you're going to generate tax refunds. If instead of just taking those tax refunds and going on vacation, if you take the tax refunds generated by the strategy and invest it back into the strategy, your results compound even faster than they would have normally. And so that's a huge driver behind this. In fact, there's an 80-20 rule. 20% of your gains come from annual tax refunds that go back into the strategy, while 80% is driven by the unstoppable force of compound growth. And people don't often realize how incredible compound growth is. If you want to do a fun exercise on your own, I won't do it here, but you can do it on your own. There's a story about a boy that was given two options: either collect $1 million today or collect 1 penny today, doubled for every single day of a month for 30 days. And so the first day he would get 1 penny, second day he would get 2 pennies, third day he would get 4 pennies, and then 8 and 16 and so on. The boy took the pennies versus the $1 million. Now do the math yourself. The incredible benefit of taking the compounding penny route is crazy to actually work out yourself. So summary, what we went over today. We went over the Canadian penalty, why Canadians are paying more than other countries. We went over the true cost of your mortgage, which you may not have realized how expensive a mortgage can be in both pre-tax and after-tax dollars, regardless. The debt equity cost, how much it's costing you to keep equity and to work on paying your mortgage down to zero, how much it's costing you to have all that equity doing nothing for you. It's like $1 million in your bank account earning 0 interest. The mortgage flip, how Canadians can actually change the mortgage from a not tax deductible asset into a tax deductible loan. And then we compared the traditional and the strategy version of the paying a mortgage and saw how much benefit Jane got over what Bob does. So what's coming up next? In the next video, we are actually going to talk about the Smith maneuver. So I'm going to explain in a little bit more detail how it works and what it needs in order to function properly. And so you can see how easy it is to actually implement a strategy like this. Okay, see you there. Hey, if this sounds like something that you might be interested in, I recommend you join the course in the link below. It's completely free, and in there will be a lot more information, a lot more community, and some live discussions so you can actually answer your questions or get your questions answered right away. So don't hesitate, click the link in the description and join the course today. Let's jump into the Smith maneuver. In this video, we're going to talk all about what it is, where it came from, how you can use it, etc. So let's start with, first things first, the agenda. So Don't eliminate debt, convert it. That is the basis of the strategy. We're going to convert it into a tax-deductible debt. The interest discount, how this debt basically gives you a cheaper interest rate than anyone has on the market. One payment dual purpose, how this strategy can make your money work in two different ways for you at the same time. The history of the strategy, so you know where it came from. It's not something that's just popped up. It's a long established strategy. And finally, preview of the wealth accelerators. I mentioned briefly that the Smith Maneuver is made up of 6 strategies all bundled up together. I'm going to briefly explain what those strategies are and tell you about the main strategy that we're focusing on, the core of Smith Maneuver, called the Plain Jane. That is the whole purpose of this course going forward. So don't eliminate debt, convert it. Wealthy people don't fear debt, they make it work for them. That's very true. The bad debt anchor. So principal residence interest is a personal expense that provides zero tax relief while draining after-tax income. That's what we talked about last time. We know that now. And we're working on figuring out how to convert it into a good business debt. The structural shift. The Smith Maneuver is not about borrowing more at all. In fact, most of the Smith Maneuver, this core principle especially, does not affect your monthly cash flow in any way, shape, or form. It's about restructuring the debt that you already have. It's taking what you have and changing into a more tax advantageous debt. The good debt engine. Investment debt is a business expense that forces the government to subsidize your wealth building. And that's exactly it. We're going to teach you to invest in a way that makes it so that the government will deduct all the interest from your income taxes every year. And the zero-sum reality. For every dollar of bad debt mortgage you kill, you can instantly redeploy it as good investment debt. And that's the trade-off we keep talking about, the bad debt, the good debt, and swapping their places over time. The wealthy standard. While the average person chases zero debt, the wealthy chase zero non-deductible debt to acquire cash-flowing assets. Many smart people, especially now more than ever, are saying, you don't get rich by accumulating cash or eliminating debt. You get rich by acquiring assets. And that is exclusively the focus of this strategy. So the interest discount. Force the CRA to give you a 40% discount on your interest. This is a really great way of thinking about what the strategy actually does for you. So the magic of deductibility. Canadian law allows you to deduct 100% of interest costs for any loan used to generate income. This was confirmed with the Singleton case. And I'm going to spend a second to tell you about the Singleton case, which is kind of the base of why the strategy works so well. So in Singleton versus Canada from 2001, this is a case that went all the way to the Supreme Court. Singleton, wanted to buy a house for $300,000, but he wanted a tax-deductible loan. So he tried to figure out how to do that. He was a partner in a law firm. So what he did was he took $300,000 out of the law firm that he was a partner of to buy the house. He bought it in cash, $300,000. He then borrowed $300,000 to inject back into his law firm. Now, because the money that he borrowed was for business purposes, the interest on that loan was tax deductible. This solidified the direct use case rule for the interest deductibility. So this case went all the way to the Supreme Court, and it was decided that because he used the money for business purposes, even though it was clear he was buying a house and then refunding the money for his business, it's the intent of the money that matters. So where the money's going. In this case, he borrowed $300,000 to invest in his law firm. And because that was the case, the interest on that loan was tax deductible, and it was confirmed by the Supreme Court. Magic. The mimic effect. So while Canadians lack the automatic mortgage deductibility that the US has, this strategy legally creates that same tax benefit. Now, it's not all at once like in the US, but over time it will convert the entire debt. So it does mimic what is done in the US and other countries. The marginal rate edge. A homeowner in the 40% tax bracket effectively lowers their 5% interest cost to a 3% real cost. So because you're able to write off the interest as a tax deduction, you're getting that tax deduction basically, if you think about it, as a reduced interest cost. So a 5% interest rate goes down to 3% without you even trying. And no new capital is required. We mentioned this already. This entire tax saving machine is powered by the money you are already spending on your mortgage today. So it will not require you to put more money aside or anything like that. It's done with the money you're already spending and the debt you're already approved to borrow. So calculate your tax savings. What if your current mortgage was tax deductible? How much would that save over the course of your mortgage? So let's go to jeffhamilton.ca/tax deductible mortgage. There's a link in the description below to figure that out. But I'm going to go through it for you here just to show you. So you may recognize this calculator. This is the calculator that we did on the last video. We calculated what your mortgage actually costs. So $800,000 mortgage, $4,000 mortgage payment, a 3.64% interest rate, which is pretty low nowadays especially, and a 40% marginal tax rate. You'll notice that the total cash to the bank is $1,232,324. Now, if we go and plug those exact same numbers into the tax deductible mortgage calculator, so $800,000 mortgage balance, $4,000 mortgage payment, 3.64% interest rate, and 40% marginal tax rate, your total potential deductions is exactly the difference between total cash to the bank and your mortgage. So obviously you're writing off that interest. That's exactly the point. But this one will show you your estimated total tax refunds as well. So because you're able to write off the $432,324 that you're spending in interest, the 40% marginal tax rate means that you're going to generate total tax refunds of $172,930. And if you recall from our previous video, the 80-20 rule, this is the 20 where you take those tax savings over time, the tax refunds over time, and you put it back into the strategy. And that really accelerates how fast this compounds. And you can see when you're talking about numbers like $172,000, it's a massive impact it can have on your overall strategy and wealth. Okay, so moving on to the living wealth concept. Stop waiting 25 years to start your life. Start saving for your life. Unlock the vault. Sorry, the unlocked vault. Your home equity is no longer dead money. It becomes a liquid working asset while you still live in the house. So instead of just sitting there doing nothing, you're able to actually put it to use and use it for your future self. Parallel wealth building. This is what this is talking about. You are effectively building your retirement portfolio and your home equity in a single simultaneous motion. So as you pay down your mortgage, you're going to take that as an investment loan and invest it to build for your wealth in the future, specifically retirement or whatever goal you have. And this is the anti-tragedy strategy. This structure prevents the house-rich, cash-poor retirement trap where your wealth is stuck in your drywall. As a mortgage broker, I have dealt with a lot of clients, especially really recently, that have paid their mortgage for 25 years and they may have taken some money out here or there, and they end up at retirement age and have only their pension to rely on, no savings because they weren't able to save while paying their mortgage, and they still have some of their mortgage left over. I recently had a client that did this, and I actually ended up putting him in a payment optional mortgage and to eliminate the payment and give him some flexibility. And I want to share an email he sent to me because it was really meaningful. He said, this is very recently. He said, "Good morning, Jeff. Just a little note to mention how nice it is to not pay a mortgage payment. I can actually get by nicely without spending any of the money because there's no payment. I did spend $14,000 buying a newer vehicle though. Anyways, life is good." And so that's exactly why I love payment optional mortgages when they're in this situation. But even better than that, I want to help people get ready for their retirement by building up a portfolio of assets that they can rely on at this time so they don't ever need a payment optional mortgage. And that's what this strategy does. And that's why I'm such a huge proponent of it. So the history of the strategy, it's really important that you know this strategy didn't just pop up out of nowhere. It's a tried and true strategy that's been around for a long time. A 40-year legacy of surviving and winning in every market, any market. Fraser Smith is the founder of this strategy, and he built it in the 80s. And this is his blueprint. He developed it specifically to fight against the record high Canadian interest rates that were happening at the time. And so he did this specifically in that outrageous scenario where interest rates were at 15, 20% at the time. It has a 30-year performance track record. This strategy was popularized in 2002 in the 2002 best-selling book that has guided thousands of Canadian families through every market cycle. CRA reviewed security. This is a legal application of tax law that has survived rigorous expert scrutiny and government review. And that's really important. This isn't some hack. This isn't some sketchy scenario. This is exactly approved and ready to go. It's something that businesses have used forever, and now families and Canadian households can use it for their advantage as well. Evolving with the times. So the strategy team is currently led by Robinson Smith, Fraser's son, and it ensures that the maneuver stays optimized for modern lending rules and rates. And there is a team of professionals that make sure that it's always on top of all the news and make sure that the strategy stays above board and as optimized as possible. And it's cycle-proof resilience. It's a strategy that has remained valid through the 2008 financial crisis and the volatility of the 2020s. So it's gone through many turbulent times already and has come out the other side shining. So let's talk about the wealth accelerators. This is a modular strategy built to evolve with your life. There are 6 engines. So you can use one or some or all 6 depending on your situation. This course is going to teach you how to implement the core of the strategy, affectionately called the plain Jane. So this is the main part of the strategy that is the core to most people's successful strategy going forward. There are 6 strategies in total within Smith Manoeuvre, and there are other strategies that you can involve that are outside of Smith Manoeuvre. However, the plain Jane is the easiest to implement. It is the most effective traditionally, and it's something that I think almost every Canadian household should either implement already or should at least know about. Custom fit flexibility. This is not a one-size-fits-all plan. The strategy scales up or down based on your specific comfort level and your financial goals. And that's one of the beauties of Smith Maneuver. Not only plain Jane, but all 6 strategies are incredibly flexible. They can be maneuvered in ways to make it more appropriate for a more conservative person or more aggressive person, or just accommodate for different scenarios in people's lives. Pivoting. Whether you want to speed up your process because you came into some money or you want to slow down your process because you want to focus more on traveling, your approach can be altered. And that's really important. A lot of people will start off with these strategies thinking, okay, I want to put 100% into the strategy and build a maximum net worth, but 5 or 10 years down the road, they want to ease off and live their life a little bit more. And the strategy can accommodate for that. And so you just need to pick the lane you're in right now and go forward that way. And make sure you're doing everything correctly from start, of course. So the summary. We talked about don't eliminate debt, convert it. That's the basis of the strategy. We talked about the interest discount and how this strategy can basically mimic a super low interest rate for you. We talked about one payment, but a dual purpose, how this makes your money work twice as hard for you. We talked about the history of the strategy so that we know that it's not something that's new and unproven. It's a long track record of success. And we talked about a preview of the wealth accelerators and how this strategy can get even more powerful than I'm going to teach in this course, but it can be powerful at any level, basically. And coming up next, we're going to talk about debt-free versus wealthy and how there's a difference. Most people want to be debt-free, but the smartest and wealthiest people focus on how wealthy they are in a combination of their net wealth versus their debt. And we're going to talk about that. Now that you know why the strategy is so important for Canadian homeowners, start taking it seriously. Click the link below, join the free course, start communicating with people that have the same mindset as you, and make sure you're getting the best out of your mortgage that's possible. Welcome to video 4. Today, we're going to talk about debt-free versus wealthy and why the difference is actually more important than you might realize. So let's jump in. So debt-free versus wealthy. First thing we're going to talk about is our agenda, what we're going to go over today. First topic is the danger of no savings. And so this is talking about how dangerous it is having your net worth or your equity tied up in your house and not having access to it. Then we're going to talk about debt-free versus asset-rich, the important distinction that really is more important now than it has ever been, and why everybody, not just the wealthy, needs to understand why being asset-rich is more important than being debt-free. the importance of options and how they can help you in times of crisis because a bank won't necessarily, and inflation hedge, how we can use our mortgage and our strategy to combat inflation and actually use it to our advantage. So, the dangers of no savings. A paid off home is a vault without a key, and I really want you to visualize that because it's incredibly accurate. If you own your home 100% fully outright yours, you might have $1 million in net worth tied up in that home. But if you have a need for that money, if you want to grow your worth more, your wealth more, or even if a tragedy happens, how do you get money out of a house? You can't without somebody else's permission, like a bank, and that's a big problem. So the dead equity trap. Your home earns exactly 0% return. It is a frozen wealth that provides zero help during a financial storm. And you might look at that 0% return and think, that's not true. My house appreciates in value. And that is true. However, it doesn't actually produce you any income until you actually use that equity for your advantage. And that is a major distinction that we need to start having a realization about as Canadian homeowners. The lending paradox. Banks are least likely to lend you money when you need it most. Equity you can't touch is useless during a crisis. And so there's a bunch of things that you can imagine happening where you might need money, whether it be a major repair to your house or a financial crisis in your own life or an emergency for something, and you need access to a bunch of capital. But if it's all tied up in your house, it's up to the bank's discretion whether or not you can actually access that capital. And we want to be able to take control back so that we can distribute it when and how we need it to be distributed. The concentration risk. Sinking the vast majority of your net worth into a single piece of real estate is a gamble, not a diversified safety plan. If you are a major investor, no one would recommend that you put 100% of your money into one stock. But Canadian homeowners often will do exactly that. If you consider your house as an investment, which the CRA doesn't, but most Canadians do, putting all of your money into that one single investment is a massive risk. And let's go over some of the things that can go wrong. So here's some factors that can decrease your home value. Poor maintenance and disrepair, declining neighborhood, market downturn or extremely high interest rates, increased noise or unpleasant surroundings, major damage, or zoning changes. And what you'll notice is almost all of these, actually all of these, are completely out of your control. So if something happens to your house or your neighborhood that's out of your control that decreases the value of your home, all of a sudden you have a declining asset as opposed to an appreciating asset, and you've invested your whole net worth into it. You need to diversify to make sure that you can protect your wealth going forward in the future. The safety reality. A homeowner with a $500,000 mortgage and a $600,000 portfolio is mathematically and practically safer than one with zero debt and zero other investments. So this whole goal that so many Canadian homeowners have of just owning their house outright is actually less beneficial than having $500,000 in debt, as long as you have the assets built up to supersede that debt. Next up, we have debt-free versus asset-rich, and this is a continuation over what I was just saying. Success isn't how little you owe, it's how much you own. And that's becoming more and more prevalent. If you follow financial advisors or financial influencers on social media, they will always talk about owning more appreciating assets or owning more income producing assets as well, just because that is what safeguards you against the future turbulence that you might experience. The new definition of freedom. Success is measured by the widening gap between your total assets and your total liabilities. So this is what I was speaking about in the last slide. As long as you are accumulating assets that are going to appreciate in value or provide you an income or both, as long as that number stays above or trends above your total debt, you're making a wise financial choice. It's not about having $10 in debt or $1 million in debt. It doesn't matter. It matters what the difference is between your total debt and how much you own. So if you have $10 in debt and you own $20 worth of assets, fantastic, you're $10 up. If you have $1 million worth of debt and you have $2 million worth of assets, fantastic, you're $1 million up. And that's the ratio we should be concentrating on when we think about our net worth. The multiplier effect. Traditional payments only shrink debt, while a Smith Manoeuvre cycle builds a portfolio and creates a tax refund simultaneously. And so we spoke about this in the last video, But Smith Maneuver, the purpose is to decrease your mortgage debt because mortgage debt is considered a bad debt. It's also meant to increase your investment debt through your readvanceable HELOC that we've spoken about and we'll speak about again on this video. And when you do that, you're going to be able to accumulate assets for your portfolio, as well as generate a tax refund that you can then cycle into the Smith Maneuver again and create that compounding effect that we've been, should be the whole goal. The leverage shift. You're replacing bad debt, your mortgage, with good debt, your investment loan or HELOC, same thing, to transform a personal expense into a wealth building tool. You're basically just taking the debt that you've been granted by the bank and using it in a different way. It's not just to pay off your home, now it's to build your wealth while paying off your home. The importance of options and what they can do for you. Wealth isn't just about money, it's about options, because what's the point of being wealthy if you have no options? The equity vault. Traditional homeowners are trapped by their own success because their wealth is trapped in their home. We talked about that earlier. What's the point of having $1 million in equity if you can't access it when you need it? Permission-free living. Move from asking a bank for a loan to having total authority over the capital you own. As we mentioned, a bank will never lend you money when you are in crisis. They'll only lend you money when they think they can get a return from you. And so it's important to keep that ability to have that debt in your hands as opposed to the bank's hand. And that's exactly what a readvanceable HELOC does. I'm going to walk you through a more specific example of how a readvanceable HELOC works so we can understand it better. We're going to pretend that this is our mortgage here. Nice big old mortgage that we have to pay down. And for example's sake, we'll just say it is a $500,000 mortgage. Okay. Now, over time, we're going to pay that mortgage down. This is the traditional way of doing things. Over time, we're going to pay that mortgage down, and it's eventually going to shrink. So next, let's say in a few years, it goes from 500,000, it goes down to 400,000. Fantastic. We're making progress. Then a few years later, actually a bunch of years later, maybe, it goes down all the way down to maybe 100,000. There we go. And then our ultimate goal traditionally is to get that mortgage all the way down so it's zero. We have no more mortgage left. But what happens if at any of these points we need access to some of this capital that we've erased here? We're no longer qualified for that to borrow that amount without the bank's permission. But here's how it looks if we do the same mortgage with a readvanceable HELOC on it. So we're going to take our mortgage, the same here, take the same exact debt, but now it's restructured so that it has a readvanceable HELOC attached to it. So when we pay down some of our mortgage, we don't automatically lose that ability to access the debt. Now we access the debt in a readvanceable HELOC when and how we like. So 500,000, great. A few years later, we have 400,000, right? Wrong. It's actually going to stay at 500,000 because we are going to introduce a new portion to this mortgage, which we will color differently so we can see, color yellow. So now the mortgage in blue has reduced to 400,000, the same as it was in the previous example. But the $100,000 that was erased previously is now available as a HELOC. HELOC is a home equity line of credit, as just so we remember. Then years and years later, we're going to have a $100,000 mortgage, but our HELOC will continue to grow step by step with our mortgage reduction. So as the mortgage continues to go down, the HELOC room continues to grow. And then finally, way down here, we have our, let me grab it, there we go, our paid off mortgage. We're so happy we own our house, but now with our HELOC, we have a full $500,000 HELOC. And so you can see in this scenario, our total debt goes from 500,000 to 400,000 to 100,000 to zero. In this example, our total debt, if we choose to, can do the same thing, but we have our options remaining because the room in our HELOC in this yellow portion is growing. And so it is our choice whether or not we use that or not. So we could either keep this completely empty and we owe $400,000. So we'd have $400,000 here, this, and then we would have $100,000 of room, not used debt, we still have $400,000 worth of debt and $100,000 worth of space that we can use if we ever need to buy an emergency car because ours broke down, or replace our roof, or have an emergency, a family emergency that we need money for. We can use it. And the same can go for here. We'd have 500,000, or sorry, down here we'd have 100,000. This 100,000, and then we would have 400,000 worth of HELOC room. And then of course here we're just gonna have 500,000 worth of HELOC room. Now the way Smith Maneuver wants you to do it is, instead of just having it sit empty, we want to utilize that space to grow our wealth. And so we'll use either some or all of this available HELOC space to grow our wealth. We're going to invest $100,000 in this case, if you use the full amount, into a growing asset. And then if you want the flexibility, you can either section off a portion of this and create room for safety, or you do always have the ability to sell your liquid assets to repay the debt and use the growth to fund any emergencies or any opportunities that you want to take advantage of. And so that is how the HELOC works. I hope that makes a lot more sense for people. Okay, so that's permission-free lending, giving you the power to control how much money you borrow or don't. The pivot potential. A diversified net worth provides the power to plan and adjust much more easily. And so you saw in my example that you can use the HELOC kind of however you want. You can maximize your net worth and have safety built in otherwise. You can portion off a section of it so that you have a safety net and invest the rest. It gives you a lot more flexibility. You can even sell your assets to have the flexibility to choose a different path, or to pivot to an emergency that you have to address. Giving yourselves the option is the most important thing, and then you can adjust afterwards. Inflation hedge. Inflation is the strategic owner's best friend. That sounds weird, right? I'll explain why. The devaluation benefit. Inflation allows you to pay back bank loans with cheaper dollars that have significantly less purchasing power. So a lot of people have trouble realizing that their, for example, $500,000 mortgage is going to be worth far less in the future, and they will be easier to pay off. So instead of looking forward, let's look backwards. We talk about our parents that the meme always says they bought their house for a basket full of raspberries, because the debt that they used to buy the house is so insignificant now. You look back to the 60s and 70s, people were buying houses for $50,000. A $50,000 loan right now is next to nothing when you can own a house with that. The same is true if you go to the 80s, 90s, they were buying it with, I don't know, $100,000. $100,000 now is nothing compared to the value of a house. And we have to realize that that's going to continue happening. Our $500,000 mortgage now, our $800,000 mortgage now, is going to feel insignificant versus the value of our house or the value of our portfolio in the distant future. So as long as you have a long-term mindset, using your debt to your advantage will actually allow you to pay back with cheaper dollars in the future. The asset tailwind. Inflation traditionally drives up the price of real estate and stocks, while your real debt effectively shrinks. So we just spoke about how our real debt shrinks over time, and has historically done that. It will continue to do that because of inflation. But the value of real estate, especially in Canada, historically has always gone up. That's fantastic for Canadian homeowners. But the value of other things that we purchase that have growth potential, like stocks or bonds or ETFs or whatever it is that you want to invest in, also has a potential and the history and the track record of going up over time. And so the price of real estate and stocks will increase, whereas the value of your debt will decrease. And so we want to take advantage of that inverse relationship there by holding for long terms and not paying off our debt, using our debt to acquire more of these things. The ultimate hedge. Carrying tax-deductible debt against growing assets is the most powerful weapon against the eroding power of inflation. So the tax-deductible debt is fantastic. So this is after you've reduced your mortgage debt, because that's not tax-deductible, and then replaced it with an investment loan from your HELOC. That debt is not only going to erode in value over time and going to be bought back with cheaper money in the future, but it's also going to provide you with a tax refund. And so you're going to essentially be paid for borrowing that money at that interest rate. And you're going to pay it back with cheaper dollars in the future. It's an incredible hedge that most people are just not taking advantage of to the extent that they should be. Summary. Okay, this was a lot to take in, so I hope we followed everything. We talked about the dangers of no savings, the dangers of not having access to the equity that you have in your house, and how to adjust to that, how to pay off an emergency if it happened. You need liquid funds. You need ability to access debt, and having it all trapped in your house will not give you that advantage. We talked about the mindset between being debt free and asset rich. You don't want to be debt free if you're not already asset rich, especially. And if you look at some of the most wealthy and intelligent people in the world, Robert Kiyosaki, Elon Musk, all these people are leveraged to the hilt because they've used their equity, their borrowing power, to invest in things that grow substantially more than their debt. That is how wealthy people do it. That's how we need to teach Canadian homeowners to do it going forward. The importance of options. We need to make sure that we have the ability to pivot and adjust to situations that come up so that we aren't stuck with a paid off house and no access to any capital or any money when we most need it. And the inflation hedge. We talked about how debt now is going to be worth significantly less in the future. So the longer we hold it and the longer we use it to acquire more assets, the greater the benefit will be. Coming up next, we are talking about required tools. This is where we find out what exactly we need in a mortgage to implement this strategy. I'm going to tell you what you need, how to get it, and you might actually already have a lot of the elements, or maybe even all of the elements, to implement this strategy right away. You just didn't know it. So let's jump into that in the next video. Now we're getting into the nitty-gritty of the strategy and what is needed. So this video is going to talk all about the required tools that are needed in order to implement the strategy, and whether you have some of them or have all of them or need adjusting. So let's dive into it. The agenda for today. First thing we're going to talk about is the equity hurdle. There is a specific loan to value that you need to reach in order to be able to qualify for the strategy. We're going to talk about that, and there's some nuances that we need to discuss as well. The readvanceable HELOC, we've talked about this already, but we're going to go over it again and what's required and how it responds to different situations. The cost to break. Many people assume it's worth waiting until the end of their current mortgage term to start doing the strategy so that they can set up the mortgage correctly. But that's not always the case. Often it's actually a bigger benefit to start early and get the compounding going as early as possible. So we're going to discuss that. The personality fit. This isn't the right strategy for everyone. Not everyone is committed to the responsibility of this and committing to maintaining it. And there's a few other factors that we need to consider as well to make sure that you personally are a fit for this strategy. And the time commitment. Spoiler alert, it's very low, but there is a time commitment that's required month to month. And so we're going to talk about that as well. The equity hurdle. The 20% gateway to strategic wealth. So the 20% threshold, you must have a minimum of 20% equity in your home to qualify for the federally regulated readvanceable mortgage products required for the strategy. That is a very complicated way of saying you need to own at least 20% of your house. If your home's value is $1 million, you need to have a mortgage of no more than $800,000 in order to have the access you need to these products for the strategy. The ideal is that you would have 35% of your home owned. So 65% loan to value. Your loan is only worth 65% of the total value of your home. So in a $1 million home, you would have a mortgage of no more than $650,000. The reason for that is at 65% loan to value, you can qualify for that 1-to-1 ratio that we keep talking about of the HELOC. The 80% loan to value will allow you to do the strategy, but will limit you. It won't be a 1-to-1 trade-off. If you pay down $1 of equity, you won't get $1 of room in your HELOC. Instead, there'll be a ratio so that you don't end up with a HELOC of more than 65% of your home's value in the long run. And that's a federally regulated thing. The banks have no control over that. That's just a rule that's in place that we need to work within. So this is what I was talking about, the 65% HELOC cap. While your combined debt can reach 80%, that makes it possible, of your home's value, the interest-only revolving portion is capped at 65% of your value. So you won't get that one-to-one trade-off if you're above 65%. And if you're above 80%, you will not have access to these products. The down payment anchor. Starting this strategy on a new purchase requires a 20% down payment to avoid mortgage insurance and gain immediate access to the readvanceable credit. So even though the best possible time to start the strategy is when you first purchase a home, many people are purchasing a home with only 5% down if they're a first-time home buyer these days. And the strategy just won't be available to those people until they reach that 20% threshold. So that's something to keep in mind. The appraisal baseline. Lenders rely on professional appraisals to set the official value of your home. So you may have purchased your home for $1 million 10 years ago, but in some markets, it may have actually decreased in value depending on the situation. And if your home is now worth only $800,000, according to a professional appraisal, that's the value that the bank is going to use, not your purchase price. But on the flip side, you may have purchased your house for $1 million 10 years ago or 5 years ago, and now it's worth 1.3 or 1.5. And that is the value that a lender will also use. So it could work in both in your favor and against you, depending on what the situation is with your specific property value. Now we're going to talk about the readvanceable HELOC again. We talk about this a lot because it's very important and you need to be sure that you understand exactly how it works. The automatic link, turning your principal into power. So what is a HELOC? We've talked about this, but a home equity line of credit functions like a high limit credit card secured by your home, where you only pay interest on the specific amount you use. So that's an important caveat there. If you have a $300,000 home equity line of credit that you're not utilizing, you are not paying for that. There is no downside to having an unused HELOC. The only time you're going to pay for that HELOC is if you actually utilize the funds within it. Exactly like a free credit card. You have the credit card, but you're only going to pay for interest in a credit card's case, you only pay for interest if you don't pay your bill on time. But in a HELOC, you're going to pay for interest immediately, but only if you use it. The collateral advantage. Because your home backs the debt, you access interest rates significantly lower than any credit card or personal loan. So in a credit card, the debt is backed by the fact that you have a credit history or your credit score. And that's how they determine how much they want to allow you to access with your credit card. With a home equity line of credit, although your credit score factors in, it's backed by your home. And so they know that your home is worth $1 million and they're going to give you access to a certain amount of credit, capital or credit based on the value of your home as opposed to strictly just your credit score. The principal to credit shift. In a fully readvanceable structure, every $1 of principal you pay down triggers an automatic $1 increase in your available credit. And we'll just quickly look at this chart again from last time. The traditional way is you pay down your mortgage and the amount paid off is no longer accessible. In a readvanceable HELOC, as you pay down your mortgage, your HELOC becomes available. The yellow is the HELOC. And as you pay it down more and more, the HELOC continues to grow to equal the same amount as the original debt was. Now, the one caveat is if you are in a 80% loan to value situation, you won't have one-to-one access. So instead of, for example, $100,000, you might get slightly less and say only $80,000. These are rough numbers, these are not specific. And the end value will be 65% of your home value. So let's put that at 400,000 down here, like that. And this would be somewhere around here at, we're making me do quick math. So we want this to be 350. Does that make sense? I think so. There we go, 350. So you can see the HELOC is growing as you pay it down, but there's a ratio to make sure that your total HELOC at the end of it, after converting fully, will not equal more than 65% of the value of your home. So that's how that works, and that's something to keep in mind. Next, we're going to talk about the cost to break. This is something that's very scary for a lot of people, so we're going to demystify it a little bit. Don't let an incompatible mortgage cost you a fortune. The lender limitation. If your current lender does not offer a true readvanceable product, your wealth engine cannot start without a structural change. If you're at a bank that doesn't have readvanceable HELOCs available, this strategy is not available to you. So you need to find a lender or move to a lender that does support it. The strategic break. You must weigh the one-time cost to break your mortgage against the cost of waiting until your renewal date. So if you wait until your renewal date, if you have a 5-year fixed term right now and you have 4 years remaining on it before your renewal date, if you wait till your renewal date, you're missing out on 4 years of contributing to your net wealth by investing in assets, and you're missing out on 4 years of compound growth. Now, at the beginning, the compound growth isn't going to be very large, but at the end, it gets to be extremely large. And you may think, well, I'm just missing out on the first 4 years, but actually, you're missing out on the last 4 years because you're starting 4 years later. And so, missing out on the 4 years can make a huge difference. I'm going to show in actually, I think the next video, I'm going to show you how to calculate the benefit of implementing the plain Jane Smith maneuver on your specific numbers. But I want you to concentrate on the difference between starting now with your current numbers and starting at your renewal date with whatever your numbers will be at that time. And I'll show you how to calculate the difference between those at that time. The cost to break is something that's a bit tricky to calculate. It's based on math of what discount rate your lender gave you at that time and what it's going to be. There are ways to calculate it, but no easy way for you to know specifically what it is, unless you're in a variable. Variable's pretty easy. It's going to be 3 months interest. But a fixed term is very difficult to calculate. So you'll want to talk to your lender currently and see what the exact cost to break would be so that you know what number you either need to beat or what number it's going to cost you if you want to break. The opportunity math. Staying in an incompatible mortgage to avoid fees often costs significantly more in lost interest deductions than the cost of switching lenders. So, like I was speaking about, the cost to switch can sometimes be really a big number. So maybe it's $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, depending on your situation. If you do the math on the plain Jane Smith maneuver and you find that starting now will get more than $20,000 worth of benefit by the end of the term, that may make it worthwhile to you. Now, there's still that immediate cost. You're going to have to factor all that in, but don't look at the big number and assume it's a non-starter. It can actually work out in your benefit to still break early if you can accommodate it and get the benefits in the long term. Mortgage setup document. So I created a quick document that I'm going to give you a downloadable link to below, so you can download it and review it on your own time, but I'll go over here. And this is it. This document can be used when you're looking at new lenders that are Smith Manoeuvre compatible, and you want to make sure they have the best possible setup for you. So I'm going to go through this document quickly now with you. So the Smith Manoeuvre friendly mortgage setup checklist, a verification guide for selecting and configuring a mortgage product compatible with Smith Manoeuvre, outlining technical requirements and operational features. That's just a lot of words to say to make sure you're getting what you need. So the must-have technical features, a readvanceable HELOC. Obviously, that's what the whole strategy is based on. One-to-one readvancement, that just means that it's going to do that perfect readvancement like we talked about at under the 65 loan-to-value limit. Multiple segments support. This is something that's really important. It may not be important to you at the start, but may become very important to you later. So you're going to want to make sure that your lender offers this. What this means is that if you have a $100,000 HELOC, that you can section off a portion of it for a different purpose. So say you want to use $10,000 because you need to buy a new truck. You want to be able to section off that $10,000 away from the rest of the HELOC that's used for investments so that there's no commingling of funds and there's no issues with tax deductibility later on. Revolving credit gap. This is how your lender treats that space between 65 and 80% loan to value. Do they offer a HELOC above 65%? Is there a ratio? How does that exactly work? You're going to want to understand exactly how lenders treat that because it can be different. Annual prepayment limits. Prepayments may or may not be a big part of your strategy right now, but you're going to want to have the ability to prepay in the future. Because if your income increases and you can prepay your mortgage more and have access to more funds, that's fantastic. But if you have a strict limit, or sometimes it can even be like you can only contribute once a year, that's a major hindrance on your ability to actually take advantage of that. You're going to want to make sure that your prepayment limits are as frequent and as large as possible. The gold standard is anytime you can make a prepayment, and up to 20% of your loan's value is typically the highest you're going to see. Verify online self-serve transfers and confirm current HELOC interest rates online. So you're going to want to have a lender that has a good online system. You don't want to have to call in or visit a branch every time you want to make a HELOC interest payment or transfer money out of your HELOC or anything like that. You want it to be all able to be done online so that you can do it in a matter of minutes. And finally, Smith Manoeuvre favorite banks, Smith Manoeuvre friendly favorite banks, Scotia, TD, BMO, and Manulife. These are all banks that have a great setup for Smith Manoeuvre and are used regularly. And so if you're going to start researching on your own, these are the banks that I would recommend starting with. They aren't the only banks, but they are probably the most frequently used Smith Manoeuvre products. Okay, let's move on to personality fit. This is where we're going to take a sober look at who we are as people and whether or not our situation is really a fit for Smith Manoeuvre. So the wealthy mindset, discipline over emotion. That's a big one for this strategy. The time horizon. This is a long-term wealth plan that requires a commitment of 15 to 30 years or more in some cases to allow the full power of compounding to work. So I mentioned earlier that the biggest compounding happens at the very end. If you only have a 5 or 6 year or 10-year time horizon, you're not giving the strategy enough time to properly compound to give you those exponential growth numbers that we're hoping for. At the same time, even if your time commitment is 25 years, at the time, after 25 years, you may look at your strategy and think, it's growing at such a monumental rate right now. I want to keep going for longer. And the longer you push it off and the longer you can continue doing the strategy, the bigger the benefits are going to be. So you want to have a long time horizon, but you may not want to restrict yourself to just 10 or 15 years. You want it as long as possible. The volatility shield. Success depends on your ability to ignore market corrections and stay invested. Emotional selling is the only way to turn a paper loss into a real one. And again, this is not financial advice. So this is just typical strategies that help people get through volatility within Smith Manoeuvre. So if you have a portfolio that you believe in, but seeing it in the negative for a short period is going to make you so uncomfortable that you won't be able to deal with it, this may not be a good strategy for you. It requires, like I just said, a super long-term mindset and vision. And so if you have a lot of conviction in what you're holding and the strategy you've put together for your investments, you want to be able to see those in the negative and know that in long term, they're going to go up and you're going to profit from them. If you can't do that, the strategy may not be the right fit for you. Also, hopefully that never happens and you're in the black the entire time, but you have to be prepared for drops and corrections along the way. The leverage mindset. You must be psychologically prepared to see a high debt balance on your statements, understanding that debt is an engine, not a trap. So as you saw in the HELOC whiteboard that I used, your debt stays, if you're fully utilizing it, at the initial number. If you have a $500,000 mortgage right now, it's going to fully convert, but it's still going to be a $500,000 investment debt. The idea is that your net wealth your portfolio will be significantly more valuable than that. But if you, in your own brain, need to see that number going down to feel comfortable, that's just not the way the Smith Manoeuvre is going to work, or not work most effectively anyways. So you need to prepare yourself for that number to stay the same and to have that debt for as long as you run the strategy. The discipline mandate. You must treat your readvanceable limit as a for investment only fund, resisting the urge to use it for lifestyle or vacations. The biggest danger in Smith Manoeuvre is that you commingle funds. That means that your investment debt also has some personal expenses in it or non-compatible expenses in it. So if I have a $100,000 HELOC and I want to take a vacation, maybe I just take $10,000 out of that HELOC and go on a vacation and it's tax deductible. That's not how that works. If the CRA ever finds out that you did that, it could compromise the entire amount of your investment loan for tax deductibility purposes. So you could lose tax deductibility on the entire loan because you made a bad choice with a small portion of it. It's not worth the risk. You have to have the discipline of knowing the HELOC that you're using for investments is only for your Smith Manoeuvre compatible investments. I mentioned earlier the importance to know if your lender can segment part of your HELOC. That is what you would do if you needed to use some HELOC money for a personal reason. You would segment the portion you need off so that it's totally separate from your investment loan, and then you can safely use it for personal reasons. Time commitment. This is a short section because it's a short time commitment. The 5-minute wealth engine. The monthly minimum. The plain Jane strategy requires only a few minutes once per month to transfer funds from your HELOC to your investment account. Really, with the plain Jane version of the strategy, which is incredibly effective, the time commitment is also incredibly low. You're going to make your mortgage payment probably automatically every single month. The only required steps beyond that are moving money from the HELOC into the investments and paying the HELOC interest. I'm going to show you exactly how to do that, but it's only a few clicks and it takes 5 minutes a month about. The paper trail priority. Your primary responsibility is maintaining a clean, separate record of every transaction to ensure tax deductibility is bulletproof. So I mentioned we can't be commingling funds. We also need to be able to prove to the CRA, if they ever ask, where exactly those funds that we're using that are from the tax deductible loan are going. So there's really simple ways to do that. In a future video, I'm actually going to provide you with a tracking sheet that you can use that's fully baked out. It's very simple and it only takes a few minutes a month to track as well, but it will give you that definitive proof of exactly where every dollar went and be able to track for the CRA if they ever ask. The passive advantage. Once the plumbing of the bank accounts is set up, the wealth engine runs quietly in the background without requiring any daily management. So once you have everything set up correctly to work, it's not going to require constant fiddling or changing or daily maintenance. It's a once a month, 15-minute period max or 5-minute period where you maintain it, you invest it, you do your quick transfers, and you're done. There's not daily maintenance to worry about. And setup versus maintenance, this is what I was talking about. While the initial transition requires some effort to make sure it's done correctly, the ongoing commitment is far lower than managing a rental property or a side business. So those are other options that you would have to earn passive income, earn income. This is going to be an extremely low commitment, and it's something that you could do on top of those strategies. And actually, those strategies fit well. Those businesses fit well into the Smith Manoeuvre if you ever wanted to incorporate everything all together for maximum benefit. In summary, today we talked about the equity hurdle, how it's important to have at least 80% loan to value, or maximum 80% loan to value, but preferably as low as 65% loan to value in your home in order to get the one-to-one HELOC transfer. We talked about the components of the readvanceable HELOC and how that works. We talked about the cost to break and whether or not it might be worthwhile to eat the expense of breaking a mortgage in order to start getting the benefits earlier. And we'll go over how to calculate that more accurately in the future. We talked about the personality fit and the different things that you have to be comfortable with in order to execute the strategy effectively. And we talked about the time commitment. It's minimal, but it's important, and it needs to be done monthly. And coming up next is the one we've all been waiting for, the plain Jane mechanics. Exactly how the plain Jane Smith Manoeuvre works and how you will execute it day to day or month to month in this case. So tune in, the next one's a big one. If you made it this far into the course, congratulations. You are well on your way to being able to implement a strategy on your own mortgage. And this is the most important video in the whole series. This is where we're going to go over the plain Jane mechanics and show you exactly how the whole cycle works and how you implement it on a month-to-month basis. So let's jump in. Plain Jane mechanics. Our agenda, we're going to do a quick recap to start so that we'll make sure we remember all the things that we've learned to this point. We're going to talk about the cycle and what actual movements you make month to month to complete the strategy. We're going to talk about the paper trail and how important it is to have a good record of everything that you're using the money for so that CRA, if they ever come knocking, you can show exactly what it's done. I'm going to show you the plain Jane calculator. I've developed a free plain Jane calculator so that you can plug your own numbers in and see what your results are likely to be. I'm going to talk about how to invest, specifically what you're able to invest in and what the rules are about that. And then we're going to talk quickly about the tax refund cycle. That is the 20% of that 80-20 rule that we spoke about already. Starting with the quick recap. The prerequisites for the plain Jane. So the readvanceable requirement, obviously we've talked about this a lot, but you must have a banking structure that automatically links your mortgage principal to your credit limit. This is the readvanceable HELOC that we talked about before, talked about quite a lot. In fact, I'll just quickly show you it again. So this is the readvanceable HELOC. So here's your mortgage, the $500,000. As you pay it down, it's replaced with HELOC room. The readvanceable portion means that that room is not used automatically. So if you never use it, you don't pay anything for it. It's just a feature of your mortgage. It just means that your total borrowing amount always stays the same no matter what your actual mortgage is. In this strategy, we will be using the room that's made available though. So as you're paying down your mortgage from 500 to 400 to 100 over many years, your HELOC room grows from 100 to 400 to 500. So that by the time you're completely paid off your mortgage, you have a full readvanceable HELOC available to you, whether or not you choose to use it. Okay. The 20% equity baseline. Your property must have enough equity to qualify for a secured revolving line of credit. So 80% is the absolute maximum loan to value you can have. So on a $1 million property, an $800,000 mortgage would be the absolute maximum that would qualify you for a HELOC. The ideal for a readvanceable HELOC is 65% or lower, so $650,000 on a $1 million mortgage. But the strategies can still be very effective between 65 and 80 as well. So don't let that discourage you. The deductibility rule. Interest only becomes good debt if the borrowed funds are used to purchase income-producing assets. So this speaks a lot to what you're allowed to invest in or use those investment funds from your HELOC to purchase. They need to be providing an income, and we'll go into a little bit more on that again a little later in this video. The tracing standard, you must be prepared to maintain a clear documented path from the credit line to the investment account. This is something that the CRA will require and is completely up to you to make sure you have good records for so that you can show when or if they come asking. And finally, a disclaimer. This is for educational purposes only. This is not financial advice, any of this. If you want to make sure you're implementing your strategy correctly right away, you should elicit the advice of a professional such as myself. We can go over your exact numbers and make sure you set up exactly correctly from the start. If that is something that you're interested in, you can go to jeffhamilton.ca like this and click the book a call link up in the top right hand corner. Or there's also here, this is launch support. So this is the service I offer where I look at your situation. I take the entire suite of strategies that are available to Canadian homeowners, and I show you which ones can be applied effectively to your situation. And I map out the entire process start to finish for you. So you can book a call that way as well. Okay. Also, the link for that will be in the description below. Next up, we have the cycle. So this is the important one that we want to make sure we're paying attention to. Turning your monthly bill into a wealth generator. Step one, the payment. You make your regular monthly mortgage payment exactly as you always have using your existing cash flow. So nothing changes here. You're going to make your regular mortgage payment just as you always have. No change. Step two, the readvance. Your bank records the principal portion of that payment, which does two things. First, it lowers the principal portion of your mortgage. Second, it increases the borrowing room in your HELOC automatically. Now, this is the readvanceable mortgage portion that I've talked about, and I'm going to show you an example of this whole cycle in action in a moment. So that'll really help clear things up if it's a little bit confusing for you still. Step three, withdraw to your clearing account. You withdraw that newly available credit to a dedicated checking account. A clearing account just makes it easier to track for the CRA's purposes. So when you pull money out of your HELOC to invest, it's going to go into that checking account first that we call a clearing account, and then to your investment platform after that. Step four, you pay the HELOC interest. This is called interest capitalization and is covered in the details in the next video called Cash Flow Neutral, but we'll also touch on it a little bit here when I show you the visual example. And step five, invest. You transfer the remaining amount into your investment platform of choice and purchase assets with a reasonable expectation of earning an income. Okay, so let's see how this all works visually. We're going to go to the Smith Manoeuvre cycle here. So this is for a fictional mortgage. We're going to assume that you're starting the plain Jane strategy in January. And so this is January. Your monthly mortgage payment is going to be $2,000 for this example. And from that $2,000, two things happen. $1,200 is going to go to the bank for interest charges. That goes to the bank. It will never be seen again. So be it. The $800 remaining will go to principal. So this blue portion is your mortgage. And you can see the $800 is going to lower your mortgage by exactly that amount, $800. Now, with a readvanceable HELOC attached to your mortgage, that will also increase automatically the room in your HELOC by $800. So now you have $800 of borrowing room in your HELOC. For the strategy, we're going to take that $800, borrow it from the HELOC, and put it into our clearing account, which is just a regular checking account that's dedicated for this purpose. So we move the $800 from HELOC to clearing account, and then we take it from the clearing account and then put it to our investing platform. I use Wealthsimple, so I use that in our examples. I find it to be a very consumer-friendly investing platform. And so I love it, and so I always recommend it, but you can use any platform. If you do want to start investing with Wealthsimple, I'm going to put a referral link down below. It'll get you an extra $25 if you sign up, I believe. So feel free to use that and kickstart your journey a little bit. So the next month is going to be the same with a little bit of a twist. So February, you have the same $2,000 mortgage payment. Now $1,196 is going to go to the bank. Every month you pay your mortgage, the interest is going to go down and the principal will go up. The ratio changes every month a little bit. So over time, the interest will get lower and the principal will get higher. So second month, we're going to say it's $1,196 goes to interest to the bank, never to be seen again. And now $804 will go to principal. So you can see when we look at our mortgage now, the $800 from last month has been removed. And now there's a new $804 payment towards our principal that's going to reduce it. So that goes down and goes to the HELOC. So the $804 there goes up. We still have the $800 that we borrowed from our HELOC last month. And now we have $804 new borrowing room. We're going to move that to our clearing account, $804. But now the HELOC is also going to charge us interest, and we need to make sure we're paying that interest every month. So we're going to take the $4 that's extra now from the principal pay down and use that to pay the HELOC interest. So we're going to move it over to our clearing account and take the interest portion and pay that back to the HELOC, and that will satisfy the interest. That's called interest capitalization. You're using the HELOC to satisfy the HELOC's interest. Remaining will be $800 after we pay the $4 of interest. And we're going to take that $800, transfer it to Wealthsimple, and make our applicable investments. Month 3, same. You're going to make your $2,000 mortgage payment. Now $1,192 of interest will be charged by the bank. So that goes to the bank, never to be seen again. And now you have $808 of principal. So you have $1,604 reduced on your mortgage from the previous 2 months. You're going to have a new $808 reduction on your principal. And then it's going to transfer over to your HELOC over here. So you have $808 increase of room on your HELOC, and you have $1,604 from the previous 2 months already used on your HELOC. You're going to transfer that $808 to your clearing account. And now the interest on the $604 will be about $8. You're going to take the $8 from your clearing account, transfer it back to the HELOC as a payment for that interest rate, and transfer the remaining, which will be $800 again, to Wealthsimple to invest in your non-registered account. Simple. So that's the process. It happens over and over and over again. Okay. Now we're going to talk about paper trail. It's really important to have a strong paper trail. So building a bulletproof paper trail for the CRA. The clearing account. So you may be kind of confused about why the clearing account is needed. Utilize a dedicated clearing account, also called an ICA, or I'll typically refer to it as just a clearing account or investment clearing account, to act as a separate station for all strategy-related money. This will also make it easier to expand the strategy later if you need. The clearing account just makes it a little bit more obvious to the CRA exactly where the money from HELOC is going before it goes to investments. And if you ever choose to use one of the other Smith Manoeuvre strategies, I mentioned there's 6 of them. If you ever choose to use any further ones down the line, having a clearing account and that setup already in place will make it much easier to expand your strategy to include even more effective things going forward. The direct route. Principal flows into the mortgage. That's your mortgage payment. Credit opens up in the HELOC, readvances, and funds move to the clearing account and then finally land in your investment brokerage. So you take it from the HELOC into the clearing account, into your investment brokerage. That's the direct route that the CRA wants to see. The commingling warning. Mixing investment funds with your personal grocery or utility money breaks the tracing and can disqualify your entire tax deduction. So if you're using your HELOC for anything other than these applicable investments, the whole portion of your HELOC could be contaminated or commingled, called. So you want to be very sure that you never ever use your HELOC for personal reasons. You're only using it for your investments that are dedicated for the Smith Maneuver. If ever you need to use a portion of your HELOC for personal reasons, there are ways to do that. You just have to segment off a specific chunk of your HELOC that is only for personal so that it stays completely separate from the chunk that is only for investments. That way your tax deductibility will always remain intact. So next up, let's finally see what your results could be. The Plain Jane calculator. Benefits for you. The Plain Jane calculator. So you can use my free calculator to see how much you could benefit. We're going to do a walkthrough with numbers that I just went through with a couple of friends of mine named Janet and John as an example, and I'll show you how you can use your numbers in the same calculator. So let's pull that up right away. The calculator the calculator will be at jeffhamilton.ca/plain-jane-calculator, but there's also going to be a link in the description so you can click on that and go right there. So Smith Maneuver calculator, here it is for the Plain Jane. My friends Jen and John have a current home value of about $526,000. They have a current mortgage balance of $419,000. I've just inputted these numbers in advance. The remaining years on their mortgage, their amortization is 20 years. So they're just completing the first 5-year term, which was 25 to start. Their interest rate, their current interest rate is actually one of those COVID special interest rates where it's like 2.2 or something silly like that. That's not available anymore. So if you have a rate that is totally different from today's rates, you're going to want to look up current rates. So you can either ask a mortgage broker. I'll put a contact to Renee down below where you can contact her, get your whole mortgage situation set up, or just look online for some posted rates. They may not be 100% accurate, but they're going to give you a much better idea if rates have changed significantly from what you have currently. So for right now, I've put in 4.14. That's about average for right now. The current prime rate, you can just Google current Canadian prime rate, and it's going to tell you that it's 4.45 right now. That will change every once in a while when the government adjusts it, but for right now, 4.45 is pretty accurate. Their marginal tax rate, Janet and John's, is 40%. Oh, also I should mention, on the prime rate, the calculator will automatically add 0.5%. The reason it's going to do that is because most HELOCs are going to be prime plus 0.5, and so this does it for you automatically. They can be as high as prime 0.1, they can be as low as prime plus 0, but for the most part, around prime plus 0.5 is a good estimation, which is why it does it automatically. So you don't have to worry about adding that yourself. Janet and John's marginal tax rate is 40% based on their income. So I put that in there. And the investment growth rate, 8% is the general growth rate that we assume for these types of calculations. You can go higher if you're a really savvy investor and you're pretty confident in your ability to get more 9 or 10% over the long term. You can go lower if you plan on doing really conservative investments. But if you're not sure, 8% is good. A simple comparison is the S&P 500 has averaged, I think, about 10% over its lifetime of returns. And so S&P 500 produces dividends, therefore it's applicable to the Smith Maneuver strategy. So that's a good example. We use 8 just to keep it pretty conservative. Finally, this capitalized interest button at the bottom. For right now especially, you're going to want to keep that clicked. If you don't click it, if you unclick it rather, it's going to assume that you're going to pay the interest for the HELOC out of your personal cash flow. That's not the way that the Plain Jane walkthrough I used before use it. We capitalize the interest with the HELOC. So I'm going to keep that checked. And unless you want to add more money from your cash flow, I would keep that checked as well. And then we click project wealth growth. So projected portfolio value, this is going to be after 20 years. It's going to be $688,577. So that's how much all their investments that they make month over month in Wealthsimple, like I did in the visual example. That's how much the total portfolio is going to be worth. Now, of course, their debt is not going to decrease. They're going to continue to have a $419,000 debt. So that still will show. It's converted into a tax deductible debt now, but it's still a debt. Their net wealth improvement is just this number, the portfolio value minus their remaining debt equals their net worth improvement. So this is an improvement for them of $269,577. So that's a pretty significant improvement over what they would have been able to do had they just paid their mortgage regularly. They paid their mortgage regularly. After 20 years, they would have zero portfolio value, paid off house, and no debt. So net worth of exactly their house value. Now they have their house value plus $269,577 worth of investment portfolio. Now, this theoretical mortgage freedom date of 15.717 years, this refers to the date that it's projected where your investment portfolio will be worth more than your total debt. So at 15.17 years, or 15 years and a month or 2 months, whatever that is, it's projected that their portfolio value will be $419,000. So every month and every year after that, the growth is compounding faster and faster and faster, which gets us within the next 4.83 years, all the way from 419 to $688,000. Now, there's nothing saying that just because your amortization now is 20 years, that you have to stop at 20 years. That's just how we do the calculations. If Janet and John are happy to continue the strategy and continue working to pay the mortgage as they have been, and continue contributing and growing their investments and experiencing the compound growth, they can do that for another 2, 3, 5, 10 years, whatever they like, and the growth is going to continue compounding higher and faster every year, and every month they can do that extra. So you can always keep that in mind. You don't have to stop at your amortization date if you don't want to. Okay, now launch support. This is a lot. We've talked about a lot of information. There's a lot of moving pieces, and there's a lot of things that can trip you up. If you are more comfortable having this done for you, please don't hesitate to reach out. At the very least, I offer a free consultation. I will happily walk you through your situation with your numbers and do the plain Jane calculator as well as all the other calculators, so that you can see exactly what you can expect by implementing strategy in the long run. So don't hesitate to reach out. The link is in the description below, or you can go to jeffhamilton.ca and book a call with me at any time. All right, now how to invest. Staying CRA compliant, what to buy. The reasonable expectation. So borrowed funds must be used for investments that have a clear intent to generate income, such as interest, dividends, or rent. So you can buy a wide variety of assets, but they all have to have that quote unquote reasonable expectation of earning an income, which can be satisfied with any of these things. You just have to make sure you're not buying specifically things that state they don't have any kind of income potential. Eligible asset classes. So focus on common Canadian choices like dividend paying stocks, mutual funds, or diversified ETFs. These are the most standard investments you can buy. Most of them, you have to do your own research, but most of them will provide a dividend in the ETFs and mutual fund category. But just make sure you're satisfying that requirement on your own before you invest in it. The capital gains track. Growth stocks that historically have not or explicitly state that they do not pay dividends may disqualify your interest deductions in the eyes of CRA. So as much as you may be a believer in, I use the example of Tesla, TSLA ticker symbol, as much as you may be a believer in that stock's growth over the long term, they have explicitly stated that they do not intend to issue any kind of dividends. That completely disqualifies them from being eligible for an investment loan. So some accountants will be comfortable with stocks that have not historically done dividends, but have not declared that they won't. But the safer way to do things, and the way I definitely recommend, is anything that has historically produced a dividend consistently is the way you want to go. If it doesn't produce a dividend, just avoid it, avoid the hassle and the gray area, so that if anything ever happens with the CRA, you can feel confident in your investments. And the registered account ban. Never invest borrowed funds into a TFSA, RRSP, RESP, or any other tax-sheltered investment account. This is because you cannot double benefit on your tax benefit. You're already getting a tax-deductible loan for these investments. That is your tax benefit. You can't then put them in a TFSA, RRSP, or RESP, because you'll be getting double benefit, and that's not allowed. The CRA will flag that, and it could compromise your whole investment loan's tax deductibility. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the tax refund cycle. So using government money to kill your mortgage. The refund generation. Your investment interest lowers your taxable income, triggering a tax refund based on your marginal tax rate. So as you pay interest on your HELOC, that's going to be a tax deductible expense that you're incurring. At the end of the year, you're going to use that expense against your income to generate a tax refund from the government. The lump sum pay down. Once you get that lump sum tax refund, you're going to apply it 100% to your annual tax refund directly to your non-deductible mortgage principal. So for example, if you get $100 in a tax refund, you're going to take that $100, apply it as a prepayment onto your mortgage, and then cycle it through the rest of the Smith Maneuver process the exact same way you would with any other principal reduction and HELOC growth. The immediate reborrow. Once your refund hits the mortgage, you immediately pull that new room back out of your HELOC to invest just like you would with your mortgage payment. And the feedback loop. This cycle uses last year's tax savings to fund this year's growth, effectively paying down your house with money that used to belong to CRA. So to show you this, I'm going to actually show you this demonstration. So you remember this? This is our last month of our cycle that I showed you. So we're going to fast forward to tax time the next year. So here we go. Tax time of the following year. So in the entire year previous of our example, we would have paid about $222 of interest on our HELOC. Now that $220 is a tax refund, so we get to write it off against our income. So $220 at a 40% tax bracket, which we're assuming, will generate about $88 in tax refund from the government. So we take that $88 of tax refund and we're going to make a prepayment to our mortgage. So you can see our mortgage has come down a little bit since our example ended. We've now paid $12,260 from the previous year to reduce our mortgage, and we're going to add that new tax refund of $88 to our mortgage principal to reduce it even further. That $88 automatically goes towards our HELOC room. It increases by $88, and you can see the same $12,260 that we've reduced our mortgage by is the same $12,260 that our HELOC has grown by, and we've utilized all that room for investments. And now we're adding an additional $88 to it. So we're going to borrow that $88 out of the HELOC into the clearing account, and we're going to throw that $88 to our Wealthsimple non-registered account to make our applicable investments. And that's how the tax refund will generate more profit in this strategy. Now, as you go on year 2, year 3, year 4, the amount of interest on the HELOC that you will have paid will increase, and so will your tax refund. So although this starts at $88, the next year it could be $200 or $500 or $600 or however it grows as a tax refund. And the amount that it will be able to kill your mortgage and contribute to your future investments and their compound growth is going to grow alongside it. Finally, we get to the summary. This was a big one, so I hope we were able to get everything clear enough. So to start, we went over a quick recap of everything that's required for the plain Jane Smith maneuver and that we've talked about in videos previous. We went over the cycle. We used a visual demonstration and we talked about it on the slides of exactly how the movement goes from your mortgage payment into your principal reduction, into your HELOC increase, into your clear account, into your investments. It's simple once you're used to it, but it's a bit different to think about, so you have to wrap your head around it. We talked a lot about the paper trail and how important it is to keep excellent records in case the CRA ever wants you to justify exactly what you've used this investment loan for. And in future videos, I'm going to give you tools and even more detail about how exactly to do that in the easiest possible way. We went over a plain Jane calculator. We talked about my friends Janet and John. We went through their numbers and their exact results. I think it was $262,000 benefit by doing the plain Jane calculator over 20 years. You can use your exact numbers as well to get an idea of what your benefit could look like as well. We talked about how and what you can invest in, the rule of a reasonable expectation of generating an income from the CRA and how to comply with that. And then we talked about the tax refund cycle and how we use our tax refund to further accelerate the strategy of reducing our mortgage, increasing our borrowing room, and creating more investments that will compound over time. So what's coming up next? We're going to talk about cash flow neutral. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into exactly how the HELOC can be used to satisfy its own interest, that interest capitalization that I talked about. So join for that one. Make sure you know exactly how that works so that we aren't making any payments out of pocket that we don't need to be. Don't forget to click the link below and join the free course. It's completely free and there's a ton of like-minded people in there, and we'd be happy to have you and answer any questions that you have about the strategy. So we made it through the plain Jane mechanics video, and now we're going to talk about the cash flow neutral side of things. Now, we did touch on this quite a bit, but it's so important that I wanted to make a specific video for it to ensure I'm covering all the bases and that you really understand why this strategy is exactly cash flow neutral, doesn't require any additional money out of your pocket, and how the mechanics of this process work a little bit more clearly. So let's jump into cash flow neutral. So the agenda, this is a very quick video, is going to be talking about the remaining cash flow neutral side of things, how you keep no money out of pocket. And then we're going to talk about the interest capitalization again. So remaining cash flow neutral. Build wealth without sacrificing your lifestyle. That's the amazing thing about this strategy. Eliminate out-of-pocket costs. You can borrow directly from your HELOC to pay your HELOC's monthly interest, ensuring the strategy never requires a single dollar of your existing monthly cash flow. You saw this with the diagram that we went over last time, how you're borrowing from the HELOC into your clearing account, and then taking a portion of that clearing account money that's in there now and paying the interest with that. This is the strategy that is really effective for keeping this whole thing cash flow neutral and keeping your lifestyle exactly the same while benefiting you potentially tremendously down the road. CRA compliance and interest on interest. The CRA allows the deductibility of capitalized interest as long as the original borrowed funds are tied to income-producing investments. We're going to go into this in a later video, how this is why it's so important to make sure that all the money you're using is for tax-deductible investments. Because if you make a mistake, we're going to show you how to correct it, but it isn't easy because not only do we have the initial amount we invested, we also have the interest that's accrued on that, and we also have the capitalized interest payment that's accrued on that. So to figure out how to fix a problem can sometimes be pretty tricky and require a professional's opinion. So we really need to make sure that we're doing this as correctly as possible right from the get-go and not contaminating these funds. The strategic growth curve. While this causes your HELOC balance to grow faster, it protects your daily standard of living while your parallel portfolio grows. So you might be thinking, when you're paying the interest with the HELOC itself, aren't you increasing the amount of the HELOC and paying and like kind of making a rolling ball that accelerates faster and faster and faster? And kind of, yes, you are. The interest is relatively small. And when you have an investment portfolio that's growing even faster, which to beat the growth level with your investment portfolio is not a particularly challenging thing. When you have that growing even faster, it still far outweighs the HELOC. And we can do the math to show you both ways so you know exactly why it's still a huge benefit and why it's still very, very, very possible without having any cash flow out of your pocket. Interest capitalization, the mechanics of a self-sustaining loan. Step 1, identify the interest. This is going over what we went over in our diagram last time. Check your HELOC statement at the end of each month to find the exact interest charge generated by your investment loan. So your HELOC statement is going to provide you with, HELOC is going to provide you with a statement that's going to have exactly what the interest is that month. And you can use that to put right into your tracking sheet that'll provide you and use that number for your investments and your HELOC interest payment, etc. So you're going to withdraw those funds, draw the exact interest amount from your HELOC and transfer it into your dedicated investment clearing account. So the way I showed you before is to take the whole amount and then just transfer back in the HELOC interest. If you're going to do it all in one go, that works. If not, you can also just take the interest out and pay the interest on the due date and do your investment separately. Both ways are totally acceptable. Complete the payment. Make a payment from your clearing account back to the HELOC to satisfy the interest due for that month. Very simple. You're going to make the payment instead of from a checking account that you have otherwise, you're going to make it from your clearing account with the HELOC funds you just put in there. And then step 4, document the trail. Maintain meticulous records of these transfers to prove 100% of the borrowed funds, including interest, are tied up in your investment activities. So in a later video, I'm going to give you a tracking sheet that's going to make this very easy. You're literally just going to mark down each transaction as it happens. It's going to tell you exactly where to move the funds to and from, and you follow that for easy tracking and documentation purposes. And that's it. So we can go do a quick summary here. Remaining cash flow neutral. Don't pay any money out of pocket. Very simple. You're doing the exact same thing you would have, except for this way you're building a huge investment portfolio over time. And the interest capitalization, that's how you're remaining cash flow neutral. You're not paying the interest yourself. you're allowing the HELOC that you have access to pay its own interest, and that way there's no extra money. So coming up next, we're going to talk about investing guidelines. You can't invest in anything you want in the strategy. You have to hit specific guidelines and have certain criteria for your investments. They're very simple, they're very common, but they're very important. So watch that video and make sure you're investing in the right things. Okay, in this video, we're going to talk about investing guidelines. Investing is a big part of this whole strategy, and so you need to make sure that you're able to identify and invest in the correct assets so that they are compliant with the strategy. So here we go. Our agenda. First thing we're going to talk about is the golden rule of eligibility. Second, we're going to talk about eligible versus prohibited assets, what you can and cannot invest in. And then we're talking about staying in your safe lane and how you can do this most safely and avoid any potential risks down the road. The golden rule of eligibility. The purpose test. Does it pay you? That's the general idea. The income requirement. To deduct interest, you must use the borrowed money with a reasonable expectation of earning a taxable income like interest, dividends, or rent. There's a link down below to the CRA SC46C1 description in the description. So that's the article where it outlines exactly the parameters by which the investment is judged to see if it's a tax deductible interest. So you can go ahead and read that so you know the exact information. But it boils down to the fact that it needs to pay you some sort of income. You can't just do it for the growth in the stock. It needs to actually provide you some income back in order to be eligible. Beyond capital gains, so this is what I was talking about. So borrowing to buy an investment solely because you hope the price goes up, like capital gains, generally does not qualify for a deduction. So buying things like Tesla that doesn't provide that doesn't provide dividends, and specifically says it won't, or buying Bitcoin, which doesn't provide any dividends or any interest on it, would be ineligible for this strategy. The dividend standard. Most Canadian common shares qualify because they have a history of paying dividends, even if the current yield is low. So it doesn't matter if the dividend it's produced is 3% of your holdings or 1% or 0.5% or 10%. If it's producing an income, it qualifies. That's the general rule. And so it's not very difficult to find Canadian common shares or ETFs that fit that description, or mutual funds, or whatever your preference is. It's not very difficult to find funds that qualify. You just have to make sure you do a little bit of due diligence before jumping in and investing. Next, we're going to talk about eligible versus prohibited assets. So knowing where the CRA draws the line. So common eligible assets are things like dividend-paying stocks, interest-bearing bonds or GICs, mutual funds, and ETFs that pay distributions. Now, along with analyzing whether they qualify, you're also going to want to analyze the effectiveness of investing in these things based on the fact that it's an investment loan. You have to pay some interest on the investment loan. So if the return on these things is very low, it may not make sense mathematically, but that's a different conversation. That's your preference and your investing style rather than the exact eligibility. Real estate projects. Borrowing to buy a rental property is a classic example of an eligible income-producing use of funds. If you buy a rental property, you're going to be receiving income from the rent that it produces. That qualifies as a natural extension of an investment loan. The registered ban. You cannot deduct interest on money borrowed to fund a TFSA, RRSP, RESP, FHSA, or any of these other tax-sheltered accounts, because that would be doubling the benefit of your tax sheltering. You can only do one. You can have an investment loan for your investment, or you can shelter your already taxed income, but you cannot do both. And there are specific benefits to choosing this route with the plain Jane Smith Manoeuvre that gives you access to funds, and that's why it's so effective. Personal use contamination. If any part of the borrowed money is used for personal items like a vacation or a car, that portion of the interest is not deductible. And so you have to be very careful to make sure you're always using the investment loan money for the correct eligible investments. And if you want to have HELOC money available for personal items like a vacation or a car, you need to segment it carefully and make sure it stays completely separate so they don't commingle whatsoever. Okay, staying in your safe lane. Your responsibility as a strategic investor. Professional verification. Always ask your accountant, does this specific investment meet the CRA's income-producing test for interest deductibility? Your accountant's the one that's actually going to be saying to the government, hey, this is an investment loan and these investments qualify for interest, for tax deduction. So they're the ones that can make the final call or should be able to guide you on the final call. But following the criteria I've mentioned should also be a very, very good start. Separation of roles. Use this course for tax strategy, so your mortgage tax strategy and the how, and consult a licensed advisor for your portfolio design, the what. So if you want to get into a specific investing strategy or are really concerned about your growth versus dividends or versus your timeline, things like that, you're going to want to employ preferably Smith Manoeuvre certified investment professional to do that, to help you make sure everything works the way you're intending it to and the way the CRA is going to say it's okay. If you work with someone like me, an SMCP certified mortgage broker, we can have a discussion about which investment professionals or which accountant professionals are designated SMCP, and that might be a good fit to work with you as kind of your power team. So I can provide you a list like that. Risk tolerance reality. Borrowing to invest magnifies both your wins and losses, so only invest in assets that fit your personal comfort level. This strategy is very flexible, and the investments that go along with it are equally flexible. So you can invest in high growth assets that produce a small dividend or low growth assets that produce a larger dividend. There's a bunch of different combinations and ways that you can do this that could benefit you in different scenarios. So you want to make sure you know what your risk tolerance is, what your scenario is, and what will be most benefit, and then execute a plan that is based on those factors. And the long-term commitment, this is very important. Because markets fluctuate, this strategy is designed for a 20-year time horizon, not for market timing or short trades. If you only have 5 years left before your retirement, I would almost say that disqualifies you from this strategy. 5 years can be incredibly volatile in the market. And so you don't want to end up picking good assets that have a bad half decade and end up underwater. You want to make sure you're giving a long time horizon to give your investments the time they need to grow and compound the way they're expected to. Now, 20 years is ideal. It can actually be up to 30 or plus, doesn't matter. Always longer is better. But if you have 10, 15 years, it can often make sense as well. But you don't want to try and do this as a short-term strategy. And you really don't want to start the strategy and then stop when things get scary. You have to have the stability and the internal fortitude to go through some volatility on your way to this compound growth that we're expecting. So, summary, this is a quick video. We talked about the golden rule of eligibility, having it being an income producing asset. We talked about eligible versus prohibited asset, eligible being common stocks that produce a dividend, prohibited being things like investing through an RSP or TFSA. And then staying in your safe lane, recognizing that you may not be an investing expert and that it could be beneficial for you to develop a bit of a power team of experts to guide you throughout this process. What is coming up next? So we're going to talk about how to start. And this is the actual first steps that you're going to take so that if you're wanting to start making your money work more efficiently, the exact steps you're going to need to take it. So join us there. Let's talk about how to start. We've talked a lot about what we're doing and what the benefits of the strategy are. Now I want to talk about whether specifically it's proper for you to, or worth it for you to break your mortgage or wait till your renewal, or all these questions that are lingering out there, but we haven't answered yet. So let's jump into exactly that. So our agenda is a quick one for today. We're going to talk about auditing your current mortgage, see if you have the tools, calculating your penalty ROI, to see if it's worth waiting for your renewal or breaking, and sometimes the results can be really shocking there. And speaking to your bank, if you want to change your mortgage on your own, exactly how to do that. So first we have the mortgage audit, auditing your current tools for compatibility. We've talked about this briefly, but we'll go over it again quickly. The readvanceable requirement, you must verify that your mortgage product bundles a standard loan, a standard mortgage, with a home equity line of credit, a HELOC. And it has to be readvanceable for this strategy. So it has to make sure when you decrease your principal amount, that the HELOC will raise by the same or a predictable amount every single time. The auto limit increases, this is what I'm talking about. Confirm that for every $1 of principal you pay, your HELOC limit increases by $1 automatically on the same day. Above 65% or between 65 and 80%, that's going to function a little bit differently. but you want to make sure you know exactly how that's going to function in your current lender. The manual trap. Avoid static HELOCs where the credit limit stays the same unless you manually reapply to the bank. So you don't want to have to contact the bank constantly or reapply for more credit. This strategy can technically be done in some scenarios with a static HELOC, but it's really inconvenient. It is not a long-term way to do it. So you want to make sure that you don't have a static HELOC, that you do have the readvanceable HELOC. The 65% revolving cap. Be aware that while your total limit can be 80% of your home's value, federal regulations cap the revolving HELOC portion at 65%. So this is what I'm talking about. Under 65%, the readvanceable HELOC's 1-to-1. Between 65 and 80, it can act differently, and you're going to want to make sure you understand that fully before you commit or lock into any kind of agreement. Penalty ROI. Is it worth paying a penalty to start today? We're going to use the plain Jane calculator and calculate the end portfolio value if we begin right now. And then we're going to use it again and calculate the end portfolio value if you waited until your renewal. The difference will be your net benefit of breaking your mortgage. So if we see a net benefit of starting today of $100,000 and breaking our mortgage is only going to cost us $5,000, we know it's definitely worth breaking our mortgage. But if the numbers are reversed for some reason, we'll know that it's definitely not worth it. We should wait till our renewal. So let's go through an example right now with this. So we're going to do a home value of $800,000 and a mortgage balance of $500,000. The amortization remaining, we're going to say that we're midway through a 5-year term that started at 25 years. So we're at 22 and a half years until our mortgage is paid off. Not 222, 22. The interest rate we've used in the past was 4.14, so we'll just use that again. We're going to keep the prime rate at 4.45, and we're going to put our marginal tax rate at 40%. Now we're going to calculate. So we can see that our projected portfolio value after 22 and a half years is $885,068. $885,000 to round down. So we're going to do the exact same calculator again, but with our numbers if we waited until our amortization, our term is up after 20 years. So we're going to do $800,000 home value. We have a mortgage balance. Now this has 2.5 years of paying a mortgage additional. So we're going to say $450,000 approximately. And now our amortization is at 20 years. We're going to use the same 4.14% interest rate. We're going to keep the prime rate the same. We're going to keep our marginal tax rate the same. So this will tell us if we waited until our term was up and we had 20 years remaining, what the benefit is. So let's calculate that. So we see $739,521. So I'm just going to break out a calculator here. Calculator. Oh, typing stuff. Okay, so we're going to take the two numbers. 885.68, 885.068 minus the second number, 739,521, 739,521 equals. So the net benefit of starting 2.5 years earlier, starting today, in this specific scenario is $145,547. So if we have a mortgage breaking cost that's exorbitant, say it's $40,000, if we are able to handle that and work that in a way with our finances that makes sense, it actually is still a benefit to break early because we'll be coming out $105,000 ahead in the long run. So you want to make sure you're taking these calculations pretty seriously and making sure you're as accurate as possible. And you want to make sure that you have the financial resources to handle the break costs or work it in with your mortgage, and you can work with that with your mortgage professional. I'll put Renee's information down below again. But it's definitely worth exploring coping with that cost to get the net benefit. So calculate the break cost. So obtaining the exact penalty from your lender, typically 3 months interest rate or the interest rate differential. So knowing what your exact break cost is easy to calculate if you're in a variable mortgage. If you're in a variable mortgage, the break cost will be 3 months worth of interest. If you're in a fixed rate, it's much more difficult. I tried to put together a calculator to figure it out, but you really need to know some insider information from the lender to get accurate numbers. So what you're going to need to do is go to your lender, ask them what the cost to break your mortgage today is, and figure out from that. they'll be able to give you a specific number for your breaking cost. And then you're also going to have to figure out or factor in at least refinancing costs. So factor in appraisal and legal fees, usually ranging from $1,000 to $2,500 to calculate your total return on investment. So you're going to calculate what the difference is in starting now versus waiting and figure out that number. In our case, it was $147,000, $145,000. You're going to calculate the cost of break. So you're going to take that away, and you're going to calculate the refinancing costs. Now, if it's close to being even, it's probably worthwhile to wait. You don't want to take on extra hassle and extra stress and extra risk just to come out a few bucks ahead. If the gap is significant for you, then it may be worthwhile exploring. But even before you pull the trigger, I would recommend talking with a mortgage broker and figuring out the exact cost and making sure you're eligible for all the different products that you need, and figure out everything exactly before you pull any triggers of breaking any kind of mortgage, because you want to make sure you know all the details before you jump into anything. And that goes to our last thing, speaking to the bank. So negotiating the rate structure with your lender. Again, I'm going to plug working with a mortgage broker like Renee. She is going to know all the ins and outs of the lenders as well as ins and outs of the strategies, so she'll know exactly what you need. There are other SMCP certified mortgage brokers that you can work with. You can just Google it. But that's definitely who I'd recommend working with for this case. Seek certified help. Partner with a Smith Manoeuvre certified professional, SMCP, mortgage broker who understands the technical nuances of the strategy. Again, verify your readvance. Explicitly ask if the HELOC limit increases immediately upon principal repayment without requiring manual intervention. Like we mentioned before, that's very important. This is such a hassle if you constantly need to manually trigger the increase of the HELOC, and it's very simple if it does it automatically. So you'll want to make sure you have that. Negotiate prepayment privileges. Secure the highest possible lump sum. 15 to 20% is usually the standard. Payment increases and double up payments options for the future of your mortgage for future strategies. So in this strategy, we don't take advantage of prepayments necessarily, but there are a lot of strategies where prepayments can make a huge, huge difference. And so you'll want to make sure you're not limited by low prepayment privileges or infrequent prepayment privileges before you jump into a new mortgage. And again, I'll link the mortgage setup document that I created below. It's this one. And this is a really useful tool to either have as a mental checklist or take right into your bank to ask all these questions, make sure it's set up exactly the way you want to. And I did include for the top Smith Manoeuvre friendly banks at the bottom, so you can start your search there. Those are going to be your most likely resource for the right product. And summary. So we talked about the mortgage audit, how to figure out if you have the right tools for what you need, whether or not it's breakable, whether or not it's worth to break your mortgage to start earlier, or if you should just wait till renewal, and how to calculate that. And we gave you some tools about speaking with your bank and making sure, again, that you have the right setup, because you need the right setup in order to execute the strategy effectively. Coming up next is a very important lesson on tracking essentials. This strategy requires you to be able to track it correctly and prove to the CRA exactly where every dollar's gone. I'm going to talk to you exactly about how to do that and give you a tool to make it much easier. So watch the next video to get that information. In this video, we're going to talk about tracking essentials. Now, this can feel like a necessary evil for the strategy, but I'm going to give you a tool that's going to make it a lot easier for you and really clear. So just pay attention to this so you make sure you know exactly what you're doing month over month. So the agenda for today, we're going to talk about the golden link. We're going to talk about the digital paper trail. I'm going to give you a tool to make this super easy. We're going to talk again about the commingling catastrophe and what to do if it happens. And we're going to talk about the 15-minute habit that's going to make you hundreds of thousands of dollars over the lifetime of your loan. Okay, the golden link, protecting the integrity of your deductions. So this is again a refresh, but just bear with me here. The mandatory one-to-one link to deduct interest. You must be able to prove a direct link between every dollar borrowed and the specific income-producing asset it purchased. This is why tracking is so important. You need to be able to show to the CRA exactly where every dollar went. You're going to have statements from your investment account and you're going to have statements from your bank account. And this is the link that's going to link those two together and make everything flow very nicely. The money trail purpose, the CRA follows the actual purpose of the loan, not just your intent. If the trail is broken, the legal right to that deduction is lost. And so it needs to be able to prove exactly what it did go towards, not what you meant it to go towards, basically. The transparency standard. Funds should always move from the HELOC through a dedicated clearing account to prove a clear chronological path for our auditors. When it's as clear as we're going to make it in this video, it should be absolutely no questions asked where the money went to. And tracing over timing rule. The CRA prioritizes where the money goes over when it's moved, ensuring that the source destination is clearly documented in your primary responsibility. This speaks to the fact that if you, for example, move some money into the HELOC and don't invest it right away, that's not a huge concern to the CRA unless it's an unexplainable absence. If you moved money and left it for 3 months and then invested afterwards, they might have some questions about why that's the case and why the deductibility of the interest is being done when there's nothing happening with that money. But for the most part, they're more interested in where the money went than when it was moved. The digital paper trail. Build a bulletproof defense before you need it because it cannot be done easily after you need it. So take the 5 minutes and do it properly. The master file strategy. You must maintain a meticulous chronological record of the strategy's life, starting from the very first transaction on day one. So I'm going to show you a sheet that I'm going to give you access to. This is my plain Jane Smith Manoeuvre tracking sheet, and it works year to year. And I'm going to explain to you exactly how to use it because I'm going to give you a copy of this for free. It's going to be in the description below. You can download a copy. Okay, so when you're using Smith Manoeuvre's plain Jane strategy, here's what you're going to do. You're going to record the year and the month and the day of the transaction. When you make your mortgage payment, for this example, we're assuming that your mortgage payment is going to reduce your principal by $875. So we'll be able to see that when our principal reduces and our HELOC room becomes available. So we put that number in there, a mortgage principal reduction of $875. I made a quick note saying this is just my regular mortgage payment, for example. Then the HELOC monthly interest is going to come out. For the first month, it's going to be zero because you haven't borrowed any money yet to accrue interest. Then the investment is going to happen. So I did it on the exact same day. $875 went to my Wealthsimple non-registered account. And so over here, you can see how that's tracked. The HELOC to the Smith Manoeuvre clearing account went $875. That's how much room was in the HELOC, and we moved it all over to the Smith Manoeuvre clearing account or investment clearing account, the checking account that you use as the hub for all these transactions. Then from the Smith Manoeuvre clearing account to the HELOC interest payment made $0. We haven't paid any interest for the month of January, so we don't need to worry about that right now. Then from the Smith Manoeuvre clearing account to Wealthsimple went $875. So that is the entire amount of transactions. Those 3 transactions are what you're going to do for the month. So then for February, year is still 2026, February 1. A mortgage principal payment was made and a mortgage principal reduction of $879 was seen. So we see mortgage principal payment, or it's just for our mortgage payment. Then next we have the HELOC monthly interest. So say that we paid that on the 5th. And maybe it's not due till the end of the month. We paid it on the 5th. It was for $3.61 in this case. And so we have to make sure that we're paying that interest and we want to capitalize it. So we want to take that from the HELOC. The investment is going to be for $875 still. We're going to take the $879 minus the $3.61, and that's going to give us $375.39 or whatever it is. I'm always going to round down to the nearest dollar to make things simple and clean. So the investment is going to be $875 again from the Wealthsimple non-registered account to the Wealthsimple non-registered account. So over here under February, we can see from the HELOC, we're going to transfer to the Smith Manoeuvre clearing account, $879. That's the total amount. From the Smith Manoeuvre clearing account to the HELOC interest payment, we're going to make a payment of $3.61. And then from the Smith Manoeuvre clearing account to my Wealthsimple account, I'm going to transfer again $875. So you can see how this side section is updating with your transfers and what you need to do month to month, as long as you're tracking it in this main section here. So the next month, we have a mortgage principal reduction of $883. The principal reduction is always going to keep going up month after month as the bank has already collected its interest. And so you get that benefit. So $883 this month is what our mortgage principal reduction was. That's from our mortgage payment. Then on March 10th, I'm going to say, I got a tax refund. This is kind of a weird scenario. You wouldn't get a tax refund in March and you wouldn't get it from the things yet, but let's just pretend that it's tax refund time and we got a $75 tax refund. So we're going to apply that $75 tax refund onto our mortgage principal. We're going to make a prepayment to our mortgage and reduce our principal by $75. And I'm going to mark that as our tax refund. The same section here, but we're distinguishing it here. Then on March 10th, we're going to also pay our HELOC monthly interest. And now it's at $7.24. So when we go to invest, we're actually going to have $950. So 883 plus 75 minus 724 is going to equal $950.76. Again, I'm going to take off the 76 cents, just keep it nice and simple and make it Wealthsimple. Or sorry, make that our Wealthsimple investment. So now you know for each month, so for March here, I'll highlight it. For March, you're going to add up all the blues, subtract the reds, and that's going to equal your green. So blue, red, green. Pretty simple. And then you get to select that for every transaction you do going forward very easily. Okay? And the months are put in here as well. So going forward, you just do that month over month over month and keep track of it that way. But for March, I'm going to delete this. For March, you can see these three numbers, or these four numbers for March, are going to apply it here. So from the HELOC, we're going to have $958 of room. We're going to remove that whole amount and apply it to transfer it to our Smith Manoeuvre clearing account. That's this transaction right here. Then from the Smith Manoeuvre clearing account, we're going to pay $7.24 of HELOC interest. We're going to make that payment. And then from the Smith Manoeuvre clearing account to Wealthsimple, we're going to transfer $950 and make our investments with that amount. You're going to do this every single month and follow the steps here very simply and complete the strategy that way. Now, once you get to the end of 2026, this will no longer tally up your actions. So what you're going to do each year is start a new sheet, just copy and paste it and delete all the entries from the previous year. So you have your 2026 sheet, then you're going to have a 2027 sheet, then you're going to have a 2028 sheet, and so on and so forth. So you can track this year over year. And if the CRA needs to ask you about something that happened 3 years ago, you're going to have the exact month and day everything was done. It's only a few transactions a month, takes 5 minutes, and you're going to have a bulletproof defense of exactly where every dollar went. Okay, so switching back to the presentation. So that is the file. And so take your copy, make your copy from the link down below. It'll make a copy right into your Google Drive, and you can use it right from there. Your HELOC statement retention. So on top of that tracking sheet that you're going to have digitally, you're going to receive HELOC statements either in the form of physical mail or a digital statement. And you're going to want to make sure you keep track of those. So I always recommend keeping all of those available to you at all times just to have a record of it. So HELOC statement retention, keep every statement showing the withdrawal of principal and the specific interest charges applied to your investment loan. Very important. Transfer and trade proof. Digitally archive all transfer confirmations and brokerage statements to prove the purchase of eligible income-producing assets. So when you work with a brokerage like Wealthsimple, they're going to provide you with monthly and yearly statements. Just take them all, make sure they're all filed away separately so you have always have access to them. And you can reference them if you ever need proof of anything. It's going to make your life a lot easier first of all, it's going to make your life easier for tax time, but it's also going to make your life easier if you ever need to prove exactly where the funds went to. I work with Wealthsimple, so I know their statements are really excellent. I'm quite sure that other brokerages have similarly excellent statements, but I've just never used them. I know Wealthsimple provides awesome statements that are really easy to digitally archive and just keep for reference later. The 6-year rule. Keeping these records digitally organized and accessible is your only defense in the event of a soft audit or a formal CRA query. So it says keep it for 6 years. I would just keep it forever. Open a Google Drive, have a folder for all these bank statements, all these investment account statements, and your digital tracking sheet, and just keep it there forever so that ever you need it, you can reference it. And if you never need it, fantastic. The commingling catastrophe. This is a catastrophe because it makes your life very difficult. So fixing a mistake. The account contamination risk. We all know at this point that using your investment HELOC for even a single non-compatible purchase taints the entire credit facility. So if you buy coffee using HELOC money, that's a problem. That coffee's interest is now non-tax deductible, and it can threaten the deductibility of the entire investment. So you need to be able to clear that out. The best defense is don't buy that coffee with HELOC money, or don't purchase any non-compatible assets or risky assets with the same money, to keep it completely separate so that we don't run into this issue. But if you do, there are ways to fix it. It just can be a bit of a headache. So the prorating headache. Once funds are commingled, you cannot simply pay back the personal portion to fix the error. You may be forced to calculate complex interest ratios and get the loan back to fully tax deductible. So let's do a quick example here. If you had $1,000 invested in Tesla, is an easy example. So I took HELOC money, invested $1,000 into Tesla stock 3 months ago. I cannot simply take $1,000 of personal money after I realize that's a mistake. I can't take $1,000 personal money and put it on the HELOC and call it a day and think I'm tax deductible again. That's not how it works. That loan of $1,000 has accrued now 3 months of interest. And if we're capitalizing the interest payment on the HELOC, it's also accruing expenses for that. So you're going to need to work with your accountant to figure out the total amount of that loan that was dedicated to that specific purchase. So $1,000 plus 3 months of interest plus 3 months of interest capitalization on that amount, and pay that amount back and have proof of that payment before your entire investment loan will be considered tax deductible, free and clear again. So it's a big headache. Another option you have is to, if you made that mistake 3 months ago by buying Tesla, is to take the Tesla, sell it, and purchase a compatible investment. However, there's complications with that as well. If Tesla is not worth as much as it was when you purchased it, or if it's worth more, or if the tax deductibility of the interest and all this stuff is considered, you have to make sure you get one final number and you clear out the entire amount in one way or another of that debt before you can consider the entire loan to be tax deductible. It is a headache. You should absolutely work with an accountant to professionally determine what that number is to make sure that you get it right. But the best defense against that is to not make that mistake in the first place, and make sure you're knowing where that money is going and doing it very intentionally every month. The sacred account rule: you must treat your investment HELOC as a sacred, single-purpose tool where personal transactions are strictly forbidden. Don't mess around. Just do it properly and make sure that account is only for that, and take your time doing the transactions to make sure there's no mistakes. The 15-minute habit. 15 minutes might actually be an overstatement. It doesn't even take that long, even if you're being very careful. So small monthly habits create massive long-term wealth. Consistency as a foundation. Successful practitioners are set a recurring monthly date with debt to update records while the transactions are still fresh. So I always recommend, if you're going to do this strategy, to sit down once a month and do all the transactions at the same time. You're going to make your mortgage payment probably automatically, so you don't need to sit down for that one. You're going to pay your HELOC interest manually, so you're going to need to sit down and do that. You're going to make your transactions from HELOC to the clearing account manually, and you're going to make your investments manually. So if you do those three things all together at the same time, record it in your digital tracking sheet, it's easy peasy, done all at once, and it's a consistent habit that will generate you long-term wealth. The verification checklist. Each month, take a moment to verify your mortgage principal paydown and confirm that your readvanceable limit increased as expected. Sometimes with lenders, there are back-end systems that affect your auto limit increases, called at Scotia, or your readvanceability. You're going to want to make sure you're always keeping on top of that. And if you have this monthly habit of doing all the transactions at once, you're going to immediately notice if 1 month your HELOC isn't readvancing as it's meant to. And so if that happens, you're going to want to contact your broker or your bank and make sure you get that handled right away, because multiple months of it not working correctly means you're missing out on multiple months of compounding and investment that's going to affect your long-term outlook. Execution and recording, use your scheduled time to execute the fund transfer, purchase your investments, and enter everything into your tracking sheet. As I mentioned, do it all in one go, make sure it's all done properly, and take your time doing it. So in summary, we talked today about the golden link and making sure everything's trackable. We talked about digital tracking, how you can easily make sure everything's available to you. And it's not a very complicated process. It's just you got to make sure you do it every month. And then we talked about the commingling catastrophe, how difficult it can be to recover from making a poor investment or a poor purchase with investment funds. And you really want to avoid that. And then we talked about the 15-minute habit, how simple it is. This is the most profitable 15 minutes or 5 minutes of your entire life, because 5 minutes a month for 20 years is going to generate you potentially hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. So you're going to want to make sure you set up that habit and stick to it. Coming up next, we're going to talk about wealth multipliers. I have mentioned multiple times that the Smith Maneuver has several multipliers, several accelerators within the strategy. And we only have talked about the plain Jane version of it so far. In this next video, we're going to talk about all the multipliers that you have access to, how you can stack them together, and the crazy returns you can get when you're merging multiple strategies together. So stay tuned for that one. It's going to be a good one. We are down to the last couple of videos in this first section, and this one is particularly important. This is something that we've only touched on, but we haven't gotten into depth on at all, and it's wealth multipliers. The Smith Maneuver is one strategy available to people, and within Smith Maneuver, there are 6 or 7 different accelerators that you can use. Plain Jane is only one of them. There are also other strategies that we haven't even mentioned yet that are available to Canadians, and I'm going to go over several of your options here and how powerful it can be when you stack them together to create the perfect strategy balance for your specific scenario. So let's talk about wealth multipliers. Our agenda for today, first we're going to talk about going beyond the plain Jane. We're going to talk about investment-focused accelerators, conversion-focused accelerators, specialized strategies, stacking those strategies, and more. Let's talk about the plain Jane first and foremost. So engineering a total wealth system. The strategy baseline. The plain Jane Smith Maneuver is the first layer strategy. We kind of call it the foundation, focusing on utilizing your home equity. It's the baseline on which all other strategies are kind of layered on top of. Strategic versatility. These multipliers aren't just more work, they are different ways to maximize how efficiently you are converting your mortgage into a tax-deductible loan and building wealth from it. We've mentioned it lots, but that is the whole goal, is to make your make your home loan tax deductible by converting it into an investment loan, and then building wealth over time with compounding results so that we can retire with more wealth than we ever would have been able to otherwise. The tailored advantage. You don't have to, and likely can't, use every tool or every strategy. You select the multipliers that match your current career, asset, and financial goals. The best thing about all these accelerators is they are completely flexible and completely modular. So making changes and adjusting the way you're doing things is completely possible going forward from here. First up, we have investment accelerators. So maximizing the velocity of your growth. So cash flow diversion directs surplus cash such as planned investments, bonuses, raises, or savings to prepay your mortgage first, then immediately reborrow to invest. So what this is saying is anytime you get extra cash or have extra cash available, instead of just buying investments with it or using it for personal reasons, if you can make a prepayment to your mortgage for that amount and then borrow from your HELOC to invest, it can be a massive bonus to your projected wealth. Dividend reinvestment plan, or the DRIP. So this is particularly important for people that focus on dividend returns in their investments. So in this case, you're going to take investment dividends in cash instead of repurchasing the same investments like your portfolio will often do. You're going to take it in cash to make an additional mortgage payment and instantly open more room to invest. So you take that dividend in cash, you make a prepayment to your mortgage, you borrow it from your HELOC, and then you can use that that money to purchase the same dividend investments or different ones, as long as they're appropriate for the strategy. Prime the pump. This one comes with a caveat. Prime the pump is the only strategy that will increase the amount of debt you have above what you're currently at, and it will come with the expectation that you're going to, out of pocket, satisfy the additional interest payments of that money that you borrowed. So here's what it is. Prime the pump. Use the extra space you have in your HELOC to make a large lump sum investment, or strategically borrow more from your HELOC to execute a specific investment plan. So in the classic prime the pump, if you have any additional room in your HELOC when you first begin the strategy, you borrow the whole amount and you invest it, and then you pay the interest on that amount going forward. That can be a big commitment for some people, and it can eliminate the benefit of being able to time your investment. So you have to be careful that way. What I personally do is I use the extra space in my HELOC to strategically borrow from my HELOC for investments. So if I think there's a big opportunity for an investment that's low at a time, I will use my HELOC to pull out. I will prime the pump by pulling out a little bit extra and investing in it, and then satisfying that interest with my own income. That's how I personally use this specific accelerator. Now let's talk about conversion accelerators. So these are things that loosely convert your mortgage into a tax-deductible debt more quickly. So rapidly transforming your debt landscape. The debt swap. If you already own non-registered investments, you sell them to pay down your mortgage principal and immediately re-borrow that amount to repurchase investments, making that debt deductible instantly. So what does that mean? If you have, say, $10,000 in a non-registered investment account right now, before you start your Smith Maneuver, you can sell that entire $10,000, put it as a prepayment to your mortgage, re-borrow that $10,000, and invest in either the same or different applicable assets with the strategy. That is going to immediately reduce your non-deductible mortgage debt by a huge chunk and start getting you tax deductions on the investment loan going forwards. The cash flow dam. Business owners route gross revenues to prepay their personal mortgage, then use the HELOC to pay for business operating expenses. This is not for corporations. If you have a corporation, it is taxed and handled differently. It does not apply to this particular strategy. But if you have a sole proprietorship and you're making, say, for example, $10,000 in revenue a year, it's a small business, $10,000 in revenue a year, and you have about $5,000 worth of expenses that you have to pay for every year. Instead of just taking the $5,000 difference and using that as your income, you can put the entire $10,000 on, or $5,000 or whatever amount you want, onto a prepayment for your mortgage, and then borrow that $5,000 worth of expenses out from the HELOC to pay the expenses. As long as you're tracking that correctly, that is a totally legitimate way of getting extra conversion for your buck, basically. The rental cash damming works actually exactly the same, but with rental properties. So landlords apply their gross rental income to their principal residence mortgage and use the HELOC to pay rental operating expenses, including the rental property mortgage. So first of all, any landlord that has an owner-occupied mortgage and is not doing rental cash damming is missing out on a tremendous opportunity. They should all be vastly familiar with this or executing it already. So in a rental property situation, if you have an owner-occupied house and a rental property, you're going to take the rental property rent that you collect, apply it as a prepayment to your mortgage on your owner-occupied house. Then you're going to borrow from the HELOC that's attached to your owner-occupied house to pay the expenses associated with the rental property. Now that can be things like your mortgage. It can be things like repairs and other heating if that's not covered in your rent, etc. It can cover all those types of things, and those are investment expenses that are fully acceptable within the investment loan structure. So it can be a huge, huge driver of income and wealth over time. On top of Smith Maneuver, so these are strategies outside of Smith Maneuver, there's other specialized strategies. For example, the one property away strategy. So this is, so I'll just read it. A targeted use of your rental cash damming strategy where every dollar of rental income is used to become debt-free on your primary home first. So one property away is a strategy where you either have or purchase a rental property, and then you can use the rental cash damming strategy only to the point where you are completely debt-free on your home. This is not the most maximized way of doing it, but it is an incredibly effective way of becoming debt-free on your owner-occupied house years and years earlier. So as soon as your investment portfolio, or as soon as your rental property is worth the right amount where you can sell everything and become debt-free on your owner-occupied, that is the time that you execute that. That's called the one property away strategy. The power of the paycheck. This is an entirely different strategy. It relies on an all-in-one mortgage like the Manulife one, where your entire paycheck lands directly onto your debt balance and reduces your daily interest. So Manulife One very quickly has a different way of calculating interest than other mortgage products. Other mortgage products calculate it semi-annually and then they charge it to you monthly. With the Manulife One, you're actually being charged simple interest daily. So as soon as you get a paycheck, so say you get $1,000 paycheck and you put it into the Manulife One, the entire mortgage balance acts as your checking account. So you have a $500,000 line of credit kind of in your check as your checking account. Your $1,000 paycheck goes down to makes it down to $499, and then you accumulate expenses on your credit card throughout the month. At the end of the month, you add all your expenses, say $800 worth of expenses, on the credit card at the very end of the month, and a new paycheck comes in. And so the reason this is such a big benefit is because of the simple interest. The moment your money goes into your checking account, which is your Manulife One account, it stops accruing interest on that amount. And so as long as you have a more income than your total expenses per month, this can be a really, really powerful strategy to eliminate the debt that you're paying unnecessarily that you would pay on a normal mortgage setup. And more. There are other strategies that focus on different levers that can be pulled or focus on different market conditions. Strategies are constantly being nuanced and created for maximum returns. And so there are communities within the mortgage broker industry that focus on different ways that we can maximize returns on these things. Some that focus on RRSPs, some that focus on increasing interest conditions in the market, and strategies to deal with all of these different things. So working with someone that's constantly up to date on all these can really be a benefit to make sure you get the right strategy at the right time and are able to switch and convert as is needed to benefit you the most. Strategy stacking, my favorite thing, your personalized path to wealth and freedom. So stacked synergy. You are not limited to one path. You can stack several accelerators together on top of a specialized strategy for compounded results. The options are almost limitless. No one is going to take advantage of every single strategy, but most people or many people should be taking advantage of multiple strategies. The plain Jane Smith Maneuver is an unbelievably good foundation that's pretty simple to execute. But when you can stack strategies that all multiply together, it can be extremely powerful. It does also increase the complexity, but with the right professional creating your system for you, it can be simplified into a series of monthly actions, just like we went over with the tracking sheet for the plain Jane. Flexible tailoring. Every strategy is adjustable to your specific risk tolerance and circumstances, whether you want a conservative stroll, a sprint towards retirement, or maximum wealth generation. This is amazing. Every single strategy that we talk about here is flexible. There's no 100% requirement of you have to do this much money or this much percentage or anything like that. Everything is flexible and can be tailored to your situation now and can be adjusted to your situation in the future. Accelerated milestones. Stacking multipliers brings achievements like 100% tax deductibility, theoretical mortgage freedom date, or portfolio value goals closer. The more strategies you can employ and simplify down to single actions per month, the more effective the strategies are. They all work in combination with each other to generate you more, to make you pay less, to accelerate your goals faster. And stacking the right ones together for your situation can make an unbelievable difference to your wealth future. Life-proof adaptability. Because these tools are modular and flexible, you can pause or pivot your stack as your life goals and income levels change over time. It's flexible, it's modular, it can be set up one way, it can be adjusted years later. You are not limited or stuck in any situation with any of these strategies. So, a summary. Beyond the plain Jane, we talked about how there's more than just the plain Jane. The investment accelerators, we talked about the conversion accelerators, we talked about specialized strategies and strategy stacking to make you realize how much potential there is in strategies for your mortgage and for your wealth future. Next up, we're going to talk about launch support. This is my done-for-you service that I offer to clients. It takes into consideration all the strategies available. It looks at your specific situation and all the numbers. It takes into account all your specific needs and preferences to develop the right strategy for you And then after that, I boil it all down to a simple, concise set of actions that you can complete every month. And I give you all the tools needed. So check out the next one on launch support to find out exactly what you can get from me. You made it. The last video in this first section is called Launch Support. This is all about my done-for-you service, where I can look at your whole situation, figure out exactly what strategies are best for you and help you execute them. I'm going to go over everything that's included in it right now, so you know exactly what's included in my service. Here we go. So planning and projections, mortgage and account setup, that's really important, a monthly success system, and ongoing support, everything you need. So first off, planning and projections. A custom blueprint for your financial future. Comprehensive situation overview. We begin with a deep dive into your unique financial landscape, preferences, and long-term goals. Basically, I learn exactly what you need, what you want, and what you're willing to do in order to achieve your goals, and I design a system based on that. Personalized strategy selection. Your plan is customized to determine which specific Smith Manoeuvre accelerators and or specialized strategies will best achieve your goals. We're going to combine the strategies and situations that we need in order to make what we want. Accurate results projections. You will be given a data-driven projection of your long-term results based on your current set of assumptions, showing you exactly what effect your strategy is projected to have. So we're going to play with assumptions. Things like what growth rate you expect and things like that, and how much you're able to put into the strategy every month. Those are all variables that we can play with to see what the results are, and it may affect your decision making going forward. So we're going to make sure we know all the assumptions, we've played with all the options, and you're comfortable and ready to move forward. Mortgage and account setup. Building an audit-ready wealth machine. Mortgage setup, priority access to mortgage brokering services from Renee to get you set up with the absolute best Smith Manoeuvre compatible mortgage for your needs. Obviously, I work in tandem with my wife, Renee. She's the expert mortgage broker. I'm the expert strategist. We work in tandem for all our clients. So she will know exactly how to set up your mortgage effectively for the strategy. And she and I can communicate back and forth to make sure that all your needs and wants are addressed properly. Transparency and compliance. The correct bank account structure is the most critical step to ensure your strategy is fully transparent and compliant with CRA regulations. Once you have your mortgage set up, the bank account setup follows closely after. And I make sure that if you're doing the plain Jane, you have the clearing account all set up. If you're doing more complex strategies, there might be more steps involved in getting you set up. But I make sure that's all taken care of and explained to you so you know exactly why everything is done the way it's done. Simplified tax reporting. A dedicated account structure and included tracking system ensures every transaction is clearly identifiable, making tax time simple for both you and your accountant. So with Smith Manoeuvre, we always recommend that you use an accountant, preferably a Smith Manoeuvre certified accountant, to make sure you're getting all the advantages from the tax deductibility that you should be. When you have this service with me, I make sure that you have a tracking sheet that's specific to your situation. Similar to the one that I showed and I give away for free for the plain Jane maneuver, I develop a specific tracking sheet for you that will have a way to record your monthly actions and give you the monthly outputs that are required to support your strategy. Monthly success system. So consistently made easy, your monthly checklist, detailed monthly actions. You will receive a step-by-step guide detailing exactly how to execute your strategy every month to take full advantage of its benefits. Like I mentioned, you input the numbers, it spits out the exact strategy and all the moves that you need to make. Simplified workflows. Your complex financial strategy turns into a simple checklist, ensuring you never miss a wealth building opportunity or a critical record keeping step. When everything is done, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's very easy to say, okay, done, and move on and stop thinking about it. Without the simplified workflow, everything seems overwhelming. There's too many moving pieces. That's why I simplify it all into one actionable worksheet. Personalized tracking worksheet. You're provided with a custom worksheet that incorporates your chosen accelerators, providing total clarity on your progress and interest deductibility. That's exactly right. I already spoke about that. Accountant-ready organization. Your tracking sheet is designed to stay organized year-round, giving you the peace of mind that your records are always up to date. It will also allow you to segregate years from each other. So one tracking sheet for 2025, 26, 27, whatever it happens to be, along with all the supporting documentation, all in one digital file or digital folder, so that it's so easy to keep track for that year and so easy to keep those records for years to come. Ongoing support. Expert guidance through your first year, which is really the most critical as you're getting used to it. So first 90-day execution calls. You will have access to a dedicated monthly execution call for the first 3 months to ensure you start off on the right foot and master the mechanics. Because this strategy is a little bit out of the ordinary from what you've always done your whole life, it can sometimes feel really nerve-wracking, like you're making a mistake when you first make the transaction. So I offer to hop on a call with you and go through the exact transactions for your first month or second month or third month to make sure you feel comfortable that, yes, I'm doing the right thing, I'm taking the right steps, and I'm following the correct actions. A full year of direct support. Beyond the initial setup, you receive a full year of ongoing support to get your questions answered and address any tweaks that you would like to be made. So if you found that, okay, I was a bit aggressive when I made the first plan, I'm having trouble keeping up with it, I want to tone it back, can you help me do that? I can hop on a call, I can reformat some of the projections that we made, I can redo some of the numbers that we're using to make sure that it works for you long term. And you have a full year to do that. And even after the year, you're going to have access to the Wealthy Homeowner community. So ongoing access to this free school community to keep you accountable, get questions answered, and join in on live calls for updates and support. The accountability thing is a big deal because it's easy to start aggressive and then peter off when you forget how important it is. And so by having access to this Wealthy Homeowners community, you're going to always have a community of people that are looking into the same thing as you, live calls from me that will help you address questions you have and keep you accountable, and maybe even ask you about your results and how you're going so you can stay on top of things going forward. And then long-term success partnership. My goal is to ensure that you move from a new user to a master practitioner who is fully confident in their financial engine. Once you realize the power, once you see the results, everything starts to compound and kind of roll more effectively and faster towards your goals. So my goal is to get you there and own your financial future. So summary. With the launch support, you get plannings and projections specific for you. You get mortgage account set up exactly as it has to be. You get a monthly success system so you know exactly what to do every month. And you get ongoing support to make sure you're a master of your strategy. Coming up next is time to book a call. So go to jeffhamilton.ca/call. There's a link in the description. Book your free call with me. There's no cost to this because you need to be able to see what potential there is with the strategy. And then if you want to move forward, we can go from there. But get your free call, figure out what your potential is, and let's work together to build a better financial future for you. See you there.